evening and welcome to ELOSOFUMARTAKES. This is our 300th take, live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star Studio of Azle, Texas. I'm your host, Barry Duplessis, as always, and I'm so proud, so pleased, and so privileged to be with you all tonight. This is going to be a fantastic show, 300 times in the making, and we've got a whole bevy of guests to introduce here in just a few moments. But before we get to formal introductions of our entire guests of honor, we do have to thank the people that make this show possible, and that, of course, is our sponsors. Tonight's show is sponsored by Drew Estate. Drew Estate is building once again onto the Chateau Real brand with Cigars International exclusive Habano's Expression. Yes, Drew Estate announced the exclusive launch of Chateau Real Habano for Cigars International on August 1st. Cuban-esque Habano wrapper, bright Indonesian binder, gusty filler leaves from the United States and Nicaragua. Each tobacco component of this new Chateau Real Expression is on point and builds to an absolute winner, especially for the price. The new Chateau Real Habano delivers a 1-2 punch of flavor and complexity destined to captivate from the first draw. So check out Cigars International for the all-new exclusive Chateau Real Habano from Drew Estate. And welcome, everyone. This is our 300th take. And if you are tuning to us on Facebook Live or later on YouTube, or if you're listening to us on podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts, whether that be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Podbean, or wherever you listen to podcasts, you are listening to us courtesy of Grand Habano Cigars. Honest, compassionate, great cigars. Be sure you download, subscribe, and review today, courtesy of Grand Habano Cigars. Tonight's guests are sponsored by United Cigar. Smoke one today. Start Living United. Let's welcome in these cast of characters. I have George Brightman, Will Cooper, Erron Loomis, Thor Nielsen, John McTavish, Mike Szczepankiewicz, Denis Tsvang, and of course, Tripp Waldrop. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Fantastic.
Spectacular. Thanks, Bear.
Absolutely.
Pleasure to be here.
Yep.
We didn't even know if this was going to get going after a while. I mean,
We had several guys go down.
The host the host couldn't make it on. We've got sickness, power outages, and what, we still truck on because that's what the media does, right, guys? That's what we do. Find a way.
Bear, I think everyone on the Coop team, except for maybe Dennis and Aaron, everyone had issues today. So
yeah. Dennis had issues.
I had lots of issues. We had to postpone our show tonight, so I think we're all kind of. Okay. It's been for everybody.
Okay.
Oh goodness, it's been a day. Well, welcome guys. Welcome to August. It started a couple days ago, obviously, but welcome to August and welcome to my 300th take. I'm really excited to have all of you guys on board. So thank you so much. First of all, we're gonna do something a little different. It took us 300 episodes to put this together, so we're actually gonna go ahead and change the view tonight, and it's gonna freak people out. But we have a lot of people, and I want everyone to see everybody, so we're gonna go ahead and change it up. And we've got the gallery of guests here, so. Got the Brady Bunch view, as I like to call it. So welcome. But I would like to shout out everybody, and we're going to go around the horn, talk about. I asked everyone to kind of bring a special cigar tonight, and so just introduce yourself, the media outlet that you represent, and then the cigar that you're smoking. So I'm going to start to my left. That's everybody else's right. At Coop, what's going on?
All good, Bear. So, yep, I'm Will Cooper with Cigar Coop. Am I supposed to say my cigar now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have two cigars. The Christoph Guardrail Matador and the La Aurora 100 Años Edición Especial, which I'm down to my last 5 right now.
Hall of Fame.
Are we going into the descriptions now, Bear? I'm sorry. I'm a little out of it today.
Oh, that's fine. No, yeah, absolutely. Why don't you go into whichever one you're doing first?
Yeah. So let's go with the Christoph Guardrail first. Because a couple people were curious about this story. So it's actually this is the story that the cigar was inspired when Glenn Case had a motorcycle accident, and it was inspired by his whole rehabilitation on it, but not related at all to that. I think this cigar in particular, we were introduced to this cigar by Ben Lee when we had the Florida Media Compound last March, and I think the folks who were there that night, and I think Bear, it's just me and you, and we were Tripp earlier in the day that day. I think that was like a real bonding night we had at that media compound with all of us that night. And it was a very special night. I think we really all bonded extremely well there. And this cigar was really reminiscent of that because Ben brought this cigar in for everyone to try. And, I just fell in love with it. So that weekend was very special, and that's why I picked this one.
A lot of sex that night.
Yeah.
No wonder they didn't invite me.
Yeah. Well, on that note, Mike, why don't you go? Why don't you take it away here?
Hi, I'm Mike Szczepankiewicz from the Cigar Hustlers podcast, and I am smoking today the Sonia Warbear. It's a special cigar to me. It's the second cigar that I really kind of blended and really dialed in with what I was doing, using the Ecuadorian Habano wrapper and San Andreas wrapper as well for a barber pole kind of experience. And man, it's just one of those cigars I always go to. It's something that's always kind of laying around the house. Usually it's in a segundo shape without a band, but I was fortunate enough to snag a box, and there's a box that's here. So I'm like, hey, this one's got a label on it. This will fit. So it's one of my favorites, and it's definitely one of the ones that's gotten the most notoriety with the media. So
fantastic. Thor, what about you? What we got?
Let's see. I'm Thor, first of all, Nielsen. I do a Cigar Press magazine. And I actually grabbed tonight. It's the last cigar from the first box I ever bought myself, which was a Padron Londres. I don't know if you could see, but this thing is old. A lot of oils on this cigar. So I think this was back in 2006, 2005, maybe, that I bought this box. So
oh, wow.
it's significant to me in that way, just that, it was kind of the first box I was ever able to buy myself after I got into the industry. So we'll see how it is after 18 or so years.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear more about that. That'll be great.
Mm-hmm.
Tastes a lot like humidor.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
All right, John, what about you?
Well, I have 3 cigars lined up because this is not my first rodeo, and I know how these things go, so I come prepared. First up is the Warped John Ronaldo, the original. The story behind this is I was down in Orlando, as one is, and went to Corona, as one does. And at the time, you could only buy these as singles. Like they're like, no one literally would let you buy a box. And I don't even remember how I guess it was kind of a half weasel, half beg, because I was like, listen, I'm down here from Canada. I kind of want to load up on boxes. Is there any way I can buy a box of these? And they took mercy on me and sold me a box. And then I told Coop later in the evening as he was driving me home, and he's like, "What? They what?" Because they would not sell Coop a box. So I felt a little bad about that, but I was happy to have the box.
But I did have a plan B because my son Timmy was going to college down there at the time.
That's right.
And so I had him go in every day and get the one cigar. So he literally went until they sold out. So he went in every day and got me
stick
one.
at a time.
Yeah. Yep. Because I love that one as well. Yeah.
The cigar on deck is the 1964 anniversary Principe. The story behind this one is I was actually down in Houston on business, and I wasn't for whatever reason at the time I wasn't thinking about what shop was near me, and so I was like, man, I could really use a cigar. It's been a long day, and there was a Sirius Cigars. This is back when Sirius was a thing, and it was like 2 blocks away. Like I didn't even need to drive there. I just walked in, and they were so welcoming, and actually ended up inviting me to hang out at the shop and smoke cigars for Super Bowl weekend that weekend. And it was just kind of everything you want out of a shop, welcome you in and sort of being good BOTLs. And I bought a box, and so this one kind of has a special place for me. And then lastly, because again, this is not my first rodeo, I have a Dirty Rat, and the quick story behind this is first time I was laid off in the oil and gas industry. I didn't really talk about it too much, but Jonathan Drew from Drew Estate knew about it, and he just sent me a box of cigars, and he's like, I hope things turn around for you, and blah blah blah. And I just thought it was a really nice gesture, and so these 3 boxes are kind of special for me, and this is a great opportunity to crack them. Episode 300, baby.
All right, Dennis, what about you?
Hey everybody, I'm Denis Tsvang with Let's Get Pairing. I have a it's a very special cigar for me. It's a Santa Muerte. Here it is. Santa Muerte. This is the 2023 release. I had a bunch of the 2018 old Black Label. That at the time, I think it was limited at the time. It went full production in 23. And that was a cigar that I had. I got a box for my wedding. Tripp was there. He can attest to this.
Yes, we
As
smoked
my
a lot of
best
that
man.
cigar that week.
We smoked a whole lot of that cigar, man. In 2020, July 26, 2020, during the shutdowns and everything in Mexico, no less. And I brought a box down and we had a great time.
That's awesome. Nice. All right. Tripp, what about you?
Oh, well, I started off with a Don Pepin vintage, the new one. There's not a ton of significance, though. I kind of think of it as significant because Don Pepin Blue was the first cigar that like opened my eyes to like, man, this is how good cigars are, and that was the one where it was all over. But the cigar I brought of significance, some of you will recognize this band.
Yep.
Oh,
With
nice.
Nicaragua from Cigar Safari. This is my 2015 Cigar Safari blend. I think it's my last one. It's the last one I could find. But this is significant because 2015, I went on Cigar Safari with the Cigar Federation guys. That was my first time meeting any of them. I like that trip was my like the turning point for me getting into cigar media at all. That was where I met Logan, who kind of I took over Cigar Federation from him. That was where I met Robbie. That was where I met On. That was where I met Dennis. First time I met Skip. First time I met James Brown. Like a lot of firsts that trip. And I wish I still remembered what the blend was. I think it's like Nicaraguan Corojo with a probably Mexican San Andreas wrapper, and definitely lots of ASP Lajero.
It's all Ometepe.
Nope,
That's the only
definitely no. Know me too well for that. Yeah. I think I forgot to say I'm Tripp with Let's Get Pairing. I'm bad at talking sometimes. I've had a day, man. I had a baby 8 days ago.
Yeah, the fact that you're here, man. It's great.
Your figure looks great, though, Tripp. So don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Fully recovered.
I'm still recovering below the camera.
Nice. All right. And congrats again, Tripp, on that. That's awesome. Baby number 3, man.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Wonderful.
Thanks, guys.
Aaron, what are you smoking tonight?
I'm Erron Loomis from Developing Palates. I grabbed 2 cigars for tonight. The one I started out with is the La Excepción Selectos Finos, which is the regional for Italy in 2011. Reason I chose this cigar is it's the best cigar I've ever smoked. So
I second
thought that would be a good choice for today. Second cigar is the Crux Limitada IPCPR 2016. Significance for this is it's the first cigar of the year that I awarded after starting Development Palates. So that'll be the follow-up.
Cool.
So you do say nice things about cigars sometimes, is what you're saying.
Sometimes, just not yours, but yes, mostly I do.
It was a long time ago.
All right. And last but not least, we've got George. What are you smoking tonight?
Okay, so hi. First of all, I'm George Brightman, and I'm me. There's no brand, no blog, no site. It's just me. And by the way, not to pull the rank or anything, but I'm the OG here, obviously by a long stretch. To give you an idea, when I first started doing things in the cigar business, disco music wasn't big yet. People were still thinking about whether the Beatles were going to get back together again, right? So it's like a lifetime ago. I can think of important cigars from every decade in between and things that changed. So I decided, not to bring a lineup of 5, but I did pick. I think this is one of the great blends of any time recently. It's a Casa Cuba Divine Inspiration, and my life has been impacted in so many ways by the Puente family, but Don Carlos was so kind to me almost 50 years ago. As my next, and so this is a practice cigar. This is like the warm up. The cigar that I brought that I'm hoping really sort of carries me through is this magnificent Marifel, right? and this is from the Ernst blend. This is it's really an extraordinary cigar, but the reason that I picked it is because literally the first trade show that I ever went to back in those days, we called it RTDA, and they were always in New York at the Hotel Pennsylvania. One of the first people who taught me, really accepted, listening to my questions and everything, was Heller Merifel, Josh and Jeremiah's grandfather. And he really opened my eyes to all kinds of things about cigar making, material, and everything else. And he set me on a journey that obviously hasn't ended. But I'm thrilled to be able to say that I can light up a cigar that actually bears the family name now and continue this legacy, because honestly, really, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say I probably wouldn't be with you guys tonight if it wasn't for Heller. And finally, because again, I'm like John, this is not my first rodeo. I grabbed a Davidoff Anniversario Shorty as my nightcap cigar because I have a feeling that's how long we're going to go. And obviously, for those of you that don't know, I have I've had an off and on relationship with Davidoff, doing many things with them, including launching them in the United States for retail, midwifing the Avo brand, and being the person that was charged with finding the factory to make the new generation white label. So the progress, despite having not been involved with them for a long time, the Davidoff's moves and their growth in the marketplace is of real interest to me. It's something I have to watch. So anyway, sorry, didn't mean to burn too much time there.
No problem at all, George. I'm just that's the first time I've ever heard the term midwifing a cigar brand.
I was thinking the same thing.
So we're gonna have to.
Well, there's really, but maybe that's a different show. But there's really, I mean, that's what it is, right? In other words, nothing existed. There was no Avo brand. There was nothing. He had another cigar in a different name that he couldn't use, and I told him that. He didn't believe it, but anyway, I'm the one that drove using the Avo name, getting Daryl to create the artwork, and I picked the sizes and the blends and rode hard on Yankee to make them live up and launch the brand. And I had an exclusive at the Davidoff shop for a year. I let it go because there was a lot of demand. But anyway, forget that. We should do that another time.
Sounds good.
But then, it's that's what happens. In other words, it's I didn't create it because my name's not Avo, and I didn't sign the checks because Davidoff did that. But I'm the reason why it exists.
All right. Well, George, why don't you do me the favor of getting to select my cigar tonight? So I have a couple of choices for you. I have the Las Calaveras from Crowned Heads from this year. I have, in honor of our friend Ben Lee, who couldn't be here tonight, unfortunately, because of ill, I grabbed a Opus X Destino de Siglo. The American from the very first box of Americans that I purchased from J.C. Newman.
No receipts?
No receipts. Yeah, hashtag no receipts.
No receipts.
And this was handed to me personal from Pete Johnson himself. Ciscasos.
Wow.
Oh, that was so good. That was so good, that cigar.
And
I was smoking. Go ahead. Keep going.
Here's the last one. I've got the La Flor Dominicana 50th anniversary of the TAA.
In a chisel.
Yeah. This is actually the torpedo. This is not.
Is that right?
This is not.
Take this off. It looked like a chisel the way the camera was.
This is actually one of the torpedoes. It's not the chisel. Look, there's the cap.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Dip it in ink and sign your name with it. Okay. So you agree with me, though, that it's very likely that this is a 2-cigar night.
Absolutely. Of course.
I think the over-under is 3 cigars, George.
Yeah, you have to
sure.
really slow
That's what
smoke
I
to
would
make
go
it through in 2. So
Considering the fact that we're 30 minutes in and we just finished the fucking intros, I was.
I know, but the thing is, some people have to talk more than others, so maybe they're not going to smoke as much. You know, here's our host and the moderator, so he might be slightly busy. But I like the idea of a 3 cigar. So I would say that you should save the Destino for you don't really want to burn that up front. I would say launch with the peat, the Escasos,
Okay.
which is extraordinary, but it's soft. That's a beautiful creamy floral. That's a magnificent cigar. Everybody's going to be jealous watching you smoke it. But burn that and then go to the American, which is going to be the American is a cigar which is a creature of modern day cigar media. You couldn't have made that cigar 30 years ago without this explosion, because people would have said, what are you talking about? I said, and there was no way to get, the enthusiasm generated for it. Not that it's not a cool project. So put that in the middle and finish with the Destino and, pretty good.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
That's a great lineup, George.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's kick things off with our major point. As Mike said, we're 30 minutes in and we haven't even gotten this baby started, so let's roll with it. Tonight's major point is brought to you by Gran Habano Cigars from the fertile lands of Honduras. George Rico and his family have put together the very best vintages for you. Yes, you, the cigar smoker, from value-based hits like the Corojo No. 5 to the award-winning 20th anniversary to special projects like Zulu Zulu. Gran Habano is about cultivating the best and making pinnacle cigars for the market. Culture, tradition, quality, premium handcrafted. That's it. Gran Habano Cigars. All right, gentlemen. Well, I assembled you all here tonight to celebrate 300 episodes of my show. But I wanted to break this down into some as simple of categories as possible because, like George said, this might be a 3 cigar night, but I didn't want to keep us up here too late. After all, Erron still has to eat dinner at some point out there in California, and the rest of us have to sleep at some point too. So let's go ahead and get started with topic number 1. I sent you guys a little bit of information ahead of time with the evolution of cigar media being our first topic. So right out of the gate, I want to go ahead and put to the panel here. Did Cigar Aficionado really create the boom? This has been a longstanding, I guess, understanding and credit that they've been given. Did they really create the boom? But at the same time, did they also simultaneously create the cigar media boom? Want to get the panel's thoughts.
I have about a page and a half prepared on that, and Bear. So just let me know when you want me to go.
Kick us off, McTavish. Here we go. Let's roll.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a nap, guys. I'll be back in 15.
Yeah. So obviously, I was not in the industry or around during the boom. That I was younger, but not that young. So just for some facts, so people are aware, the magazine launched in August, September of 1992. Imports of cigars were flat going into 1992. However, simultaneously in 1992, cigar imports jumped, depending on who you ask, 3 to 4%. But some other interesting cofactors here to keep in mind. Habanos exports dropped 10 million cigars the year just leading up to the year before, because they had wrapper issues, they had mold issues. There was just a disaster of epic proportions coming out of Habanos. So the U.S. economic recession ended in March of 1991, so basically the year leading up to it. Bill Clinton was elected president in 1992, so you had a changeover from GW to Bill Clinton, also a cigar smoker. And then the coffee industry also took over sort of at the beginning of the 90s. You really saw sort of a coffee boom. And then one of the interesting things, and I think this will be a discussion point for later on in the evening, but I think you kind of saw a little bit of the baton passing from the silent generation to the baby boomer generation, because this is around the time where the median age of baby boomers was 37 years old. So, for some baby boomers who are a little bit on the older end, like in their 40s, their kids are sort of, aged out, left the house. There's a lot of extra income. and you're leading into a good economic time in the United States and North America. So I think you've got a confluence of a lot of positive things happening. And I think it's a factor of Cigar Aficionado could not have picked. It's like getting Apple on day one. Like they were literally Apple on day one with 10,000 shares, and they came in at literally the perfect time one could come in. And then I think what happened was they shepherded the sort of lifestyle of cigars by having people who had already kind of, and Dave Garofalo wrote a really good article on this, is that the end of the 80s and kind of beginning of the 90s, all of a sudden you saw all these celebrities openly smoking cigars on TV, openly smoking cigars in movies. And so you've got Cigar Aficionado comes in right at the time where it's sort of becoming like pre-becoming cool to smoke cigars, and they sort of launched this lifestyle cigar brand magazine. And I think that sort of go along with the other factors that were going in the industry. As far as cigar media goes, no question. They were the sort of inception of, truly cigar media. And I think the rest obviously is history. And that's kind of my take as a guy who wasn't around smoking in the 90s, who wasn't there. Just a quick business analysis on all the different factors I saw going on at the time.
I agree.
George, rebuttal?
Well, you really want to turn it to me now, or you want to let anybody else weigh in?
Nobody else here was alive.
Yeah. I have one.
Go ahead, Coop. Go ahead. You got something you want to say?
Okay. Well, I was gonna say I agree with the first part that John said on them. I think all the reasons John said, you can definitely attribute the boom to them. As far as the cigar media boom, no, I don't think so. And because I think if you want to say the print media piece, they facilitated that a lot long, but they were really behind the curve as far as the multi-platform piece. They had to play catch up in that area. So I think there was social media that drove that piece more. So I don't really attribute, like I said, these new modern platforms to Aficionado. I would say the print piece, yes, but not the modern piece at all.
Well, I think they definitely, I think, sparked the interest in people, during the boom, and that then led to them seeking out other platforms. So in a sense,
point. It's a fair point. Yeah, that's a fair point too.
Yeah, because in 1992, there was no. I mean, other than
it did not exist. You
Right.
didn't have platforms. Let's be clear. So let's put a few things in perspective. First of all, in 1992, I left Davidoff to start Cigar Aficionado magazine with Marvin, but I've been in the business for 20 years. And in that 20 years that I've been in the industry, imports to the United States, in other words, this is well past the time of the 1963 Surgeon General's report and the attendant brief spike in cigar sales. In the period from, say, 1973 to 1992, imports of premium handmade cigars into the United States always stayed right around 100 million. Sometimes they were 98 and people would, be freaking out and going, what's happening? And oh my God, we're not going to make it to retirement. And sometimes it'd be 101 or 101.5. And people would be like, thank God we were wrong. The sky isn't falling. Cigar Aficionado, John is 1,000% correct in saying that we launched in summer. We launched at the trade show, gave everybody a sneak preview. To that point, numbers were already pretty solid for the year. But Cigar Aficionado hit the newsstands and sparked this craze of attention. And we'll address the idea about what Dave was saying about people smoking, because it's absolutely not true that they were doing that in public before. They were not on TV. They were not in movies prior to the appearance of Cigar Aficionado. We made that cool. But the thing is, when Cigar Aficionado appeared, in the last 4 months of the year, there was such a spike in demand. And I mean, people understood. They were pumping cigars in. We finished that year with 103 million cigars, which had not happened in the lifetime of most of the people in the industry. And everybody said, oh my God, this is great. You better take advantage of it because it's not going to last. The next year it was 107. The year after that, it was 124. And the year after that, it was 175. And every time people said, this is not going to last, and slowly but surely, people began to realize that the life on the ground had changed. And, of course, we hit in 98, we hit an excess, and it took a long time for all that bullshit to get washed out. But at the end of the day, by the year 2000, the market had settled back to in excess of 300 million, steady growth on top of that. In other words, 7, 8, 10, 12%, depending on the year. So what that means is inside a decade, we tripled the base of the industry. That doesn't happen in consumer industries without a collapse afterwards. And we just took a little pause and kept marching. Social media didn't exist as we know it today, so it's pointless to talk about all these other opportunists that have come in and taken advantage and embraced all these tools to reach an army of consumers who didn't exist before Cigar Aficionado. And let's be clear, once Cigar Aficionado was out there, first of all kinds of every men's lifestyle magazine wanted to get a piece of that. But more importantly, interesting counterpoints to Cigar Aficionado in print. And don't forget, the 90s is the last great era of print, of magazines, creation. It was an explosion of new titles, and the newsstands were really lively. There was a lot happening. The one magazine that survived all of that is Cigar Aficionado. But think about it. Sig started his magazine. There were, Thor's. There were all of these other. Cigar Aficionado created space where people could give a creative approach that was not Cigar Aficionado, right? And I think that informs sort of strategy that a lot of people had. We're not going to be the big fancy lifestyle magazine, because it didn't take that long for Cigar Aficionado to go from big cigar, little aficionado. By the way, we made that word popular in the U.S. and in the world. No one used the term aficionado until it showed up on the magazine. But when we went from big cigar, little aficionado to little cigar, big aficionado, by that time there was so much more interest and embrace in this. And yes, we got people to come out of the closet as cigar smokers. And it began to be something that was present. I'm not saying that there weren't people in movies smoking cigars, but they were villains, and they were, New York cab drivers. They were caricatures. They weren't, the hero or the anti-hero of a given show was not openly smoking a cigar. That came with the boom of the 90s. And there were all kinds of people who made that, creative boost. In other words, they put their style on a different point of view about it. And thank God, they were this explosion of approaches to this is really and the fact that there was an audience for them, and many of them are gone, but others have come up in their place. But the fact that there was an audience for that is what gave legs to the idea that you could create something that was more immediate and more lively. And Coop, your point about Cigar Aficionado not embracing any form of media outside of print is 1,000% spot on. Not that there weren't certain people who wanted that to be different. We got Cigar Aficionado TV shut down more or less at the 11th hour. When we were ready, we had a studio and producer and director and everything else all ready to go, and Marvin pulled the plug. But it's the idea that all of these other various forms of cigar media that we're all familiar with right now weren't in the landscape then, creating this huge explosion of new customers who were desperate to learn. was what gave opportunity for newsletters. And the first people to figure it out were sort of bloggers, who were giving things that were more immediate. They didn't have the lead time of a conventional glossy print magazine, and so they could beat us to the punch. Listen, talk to Charlie about why Half Wheel works the way it does, right? In other words, the fact that there are now all of these ways to be immediately aware of developments is a modern phenomenon. It has nothing to do with how the boom started and how people embraced it. And John, every factor that you said about why things make sense, why they were there, but believe me, having been in cigar retail for many years before that, I knew the difference between having a customer that's a guy in a suit that comes from his office, and you have a conversation with him and sell him something and he leaves, and the kind of embrace by all these people who were coming into cigar stores and going, what the hell is going on? Teach me, I gotta know. Now, admittedly, some of them were schmucks who were coming in and going, oh, I only smoke Cohoba and Monte Cristo. Have you got anything like that? And that adventure, how to turn bullshit artists into real customers. But the industry was actually flat-footed when we started. There were, by the way, one of the most successful cigar importers and distributors in the country actually looked at Marvin. I introduced him. I warned Marvin before I introduced him at the trade show when we were launching the magazine. And the guy, Dan, takes the cigar out of his mouth, a little bit of drool in the corner, and he goes, what are you talking about? You do a story about me, you do a story about Frank, you do a story about Lou. Then you're out of issues. There's no more issues. You forget it. There's nothing else to write about. All kinds of people in the industry, forget Marvin's friends and the people that were, in his company who were absolutely opposed to it. All kinds of people in the industry were like, this can't last. It's not going to happen. This thing is, forget it. It's a flash in the pan.
So fast forward a little bit over a decade, like you said, it creates this huge amount of people who are wanting the more information. And Thor, your magazine launches in 2007. Right. I'm sure you had a lot of the people saying the same thing to you about starting up a cigar publication. Like, what were some of those initial challenges? And did you draw inspiration from Cigar Aficionado, or was this just something that you felt called to do?
Well, yeah, I mean, I started smoking cigars during the boom. I was a teenager, and so that's kind of when I picked it up, and so I was very familiar with it. But I went to school for writing, fiction writing, and it was a way for me to use my creative writing, just to kind of do something different. Because, like, George was saying, Cigar Aficionado, they had the luxury and lifestyle kind of thing, but there wasn't anything kind of edgy, kind of that represented the next generation of cigar smokers. And I think MySpace was still around at the time, and so there wasn't a huge online presence like there is today. And so that was my focus. I just kind of wanted to do something a little bit different, that hasn't been done before. So
what?
Yeah, that was probably the opening for cigar fan fiction, but unfortunately.
Erron, I want to get your thoughts here. I know that you have some over the years you've had some mixed feelings about Cigar Aficionado and everything, but I mean, leading up to developing Palates, and even the predecessor to it. I mean, would you be in the space? Would you be in the space if it weren't for Cigar Aficionado, or do you think it was really the cigars that ultimately led you to where you are in the space that you've created?
I can't really, like, the evolution of humanity and how things get to where they are. I can't really speak to that, whether that would be the case or not. I can't say that Cigar Aficionado played any kind of role in my getting into cigars or my kind of journey through cigars. I aware of its existence, but it wasn't something that inspired me or anything like that. So, there was nothing from that publication that I could say is a building block for me to get into media.
Eric, can I ask Erron a question?
Please.
I understand that point of view, and by the way, I don't want to be the guy that's stuck here defending Cigar Aficionado all night, because I've been gone for more than 20 years. But if Cigar Aficionado hadn't created this space where it's not just about the coverage, like if forget the lifestyle stuff, talk about cigars and ratings. If they hadn't come into a space and created this sort of the monolith of the 100-point rating system and the kind of vocabulary that they did, that's that becoming sort of ubiquitous is what gives room for people like you to have a completely different approach to it and a much more creative and individual. In other words, you're like counter programming to a Cigar Aficionado rating. And if Cigar Aficionado, I'm asking seriously, if thinking about that from the point of view of how it has evolved, if Cigar Aficionado isn't there in the space and continuing to be that, we're the Godfather and we did it all, blah 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 blah. It doesn't. The space isn't there for you to have this really creative and original approach to it.
Yeah, that's true. But like I'm mentioning, I'm probably one of the latest to the game in this group right here. So there were so many other entities that were that had the same, I guess, the same impact. So Aficionado was there, but there were tons of other magazines. There were tons of other blogs. All that stuff existed when I came into the space. So
what was the time frame? What was the time frame that you launched, that you decided to put it together?
Like 2013 is when I got into cigar media. So there's a ton of people already in the space. So the 100-point scale, yes, I'm sure, it coming from the wine industry and Aficionado taking that on, yes, it's there. There's already a bunch of other sites that are using the 100-point scale. So it's me seeing a sea of hundreds and saying, this is not right. This is wrong. This is the wrong way to do it. It's not because of a entity doing it and I'm going to go against CA and I'm going to do it differently than they are. It's just that, the masses are doing it. I want to get away from that. So like I said, I'm way later, so I can't source the origin to CA as why I'm going counter to it.
Well, if anyone, I think
makes sense.
Thor, you were kind of counter culture to it, like as
yeah,
well.
Absolutely.
Because,
I recognize
no ratings.
People embrace it.
No ratings.
Embrace the
beer, not wine. Then you started doing
true.
coffee, and then even the artwork, was all I guess
the cartoons,
cartoons
and they were. It was the anti-Cigar Aficionado. It was such a breath of fresh air.
Right. Well, I appreciate that. And that was kind of the idea, to do something that was totally different, because you had your Smokes and your other magazines out there before that were kind of just the same, just a spinoff, in my opinion, that were riding the coattails. And so to do something different, a little, from a creative point of view, so it's not for the better, but it's definitely a fun expression from someone that grew up, in the time during the 90s and up to today to see the growth of the industry. So it's been a lot of fun.
But there was an immediate uptake. Sorry, go ahead, Bear.
I was going to say, Mike. I want to get Mike in the conversation here because Mike's the last person and he's obviously got his reasons for coming into cigar media, even though he'll probably say he's not a member of cigar media. But even you took a counter approach to this too, because you have a podcast that you do, and then you even glotched into the whole Patreon thing, and you went really super edgy and really kind of countered even the whole idea of ratings and stuff, and almost to the point of kind of making fun of them in some regard too, but having fun with it all at the same time.
Yeah, of course. For me personally, I really believe in synergy, and I think that synergistic approach, whether it was work to establish together just kind of by luck, being in the year 92, I think that Aficionado did a lot of good things at that time. But the reality is that, man, Arnold Schwarzenegger was fucking amazing before 1992. Predator, Commando, he was the hero smoking cigars. A-Team, Hannibal, that motherfucker was always smoking cigars. So there are things that were going on in society, I think, that really kind of helped push things in the other forward in the direction of the cigar industry. Was Cigar Aficionado part of that? Absolutely. Were they the be all end all? I don't think so. I'm grateful that they were there. I'm grateful that they did everything that they did at that time, because I definitely think it was helpful. But without society kind of moving together as a whole and seeing some type of glam in it, I don't think that cigars would have propelled forward. Now, for me personally, I don't know. I just like to talk to people and really just kind of say whatever the hell I want to say. So I don't really I've never really reflected back on the platforms of the past or anything. Everybody's and I will never discredit somebody for putting in hard work and effort for, something when I was 8, but I honestly think that it requires a lot of things for a boom to happen, and it's not just a magazine. The magazine is one part of that component, and I solely believe, or wholeheartedly believe, in all reality, that the biggest thing that we need to focus on now is no longer letting cigars be demonized in society. So how the hell we do that is the biggest thing that I think everybody on this platform and every cigar smoker really needs to focus on. So
we've got a lot of different.
Send your money to CRA.
Say that again, George.
Definitely send your money to CRA. They're the people that are fighting for you.
Yeah, maybe and again, I kind of go back to the one thing of it, yeah, we do need those fights, but the reality is that it needs to be perceived.
The public perception needs to change, not just the politics.
Right. On a public level, that, hey, cigar smoking isn't as bad as everybody thinks it is. I always love that challenge and that conversation. I know that I'm deviating at this point, but I'm a big believer in taking care of myself and being healthy. And I always love challenging the fact of hey, if you guys want to pull blood work at any given time, who's healthier, the guy that smokes 4 or 5 cigars a day and takes care of himself, or the guy that sits in a cubicle and works his ass off all day, eats McDonald's and all types of other horse shit. Who's in more trouble, right? So yeah, CRA is good, but again, public opinion is definitely what we need to move forward towards. And I think that with all of these platforms available, I think that it's definitely achievable.
So, Coop, to go off your top opinion about not creating necessarily the cigar media boom, has digital media surpassed print? And I'll leave that question up to your interpretation on how you want to answer it.
No, because all you have to do is look at a box of cigars with a shelf talker, and 95% of them are print media ratings. So until that changes, and we've made little baby steps with that, but print is still king in this industry.
Yeah, I can tell you, as someone who used to be in the industry up here, and this is Canada, and this is not that long ago, no one came in, despite the fact that I was doing cigar media, nobody came in with my review of a cigar saying, hey, you got this cigar in stock, can I buy this? They came in with the Cigar Aficionado Top 25 magazine and literally said, do you have this cigar? Do you have this cigar? Do you have this cigar? And this isn't like one-off. This is like Christmas time, right when the magazine came on, and I told everyone to prepare for it, and it'd be a parade of people coming in literally with the magazine in hand or a printout of the magazine saying, show me these cigars. Which of these do you have? These are the ones I'm going to buy. And this is not that long ago. This is, 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, I think it's still like that. I mean, those ratings move product. That's why it holds so much merit.
Yep. But that's
why manufacturers embrace it.
However, if you look carefully, let's take the Cigar Aficionado ratings off those shelf talkers. Mm-hmm. There's no online media I'd even put in there are some small publications out there, and I'm not talking these like Thor's is very established, Cigar Snob's very established. I'm talking, I see shelf talkers with publications I've never heard of, print publications, and they put the shelf talkers on there first over someone, let's say Halfwheel, who we would agree probably is the leader in the digital platform right now. So that just baffles me sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think it's just this industry hasn't come over the hump on that yet. And because that's what's being promoted on the shelf, though, I think that is why you see consumers still gravitate back to that.
Brief shout out to Charlie, who wanted to be here, by the way, tonight, but he couldn't be. So just brief shout out.
I'm bummed out that Charlie's not here. But Coop, let's think about one other thing. You look, the brown spirits revolution definitely happened because of cigars. But go in a liquor store today. You go in a liquor store today, you can see bourbons, rums, gins, even vodkas that are with shelf talkers and neck tags that are citing all kinds of flaky, weird, bullshit, stuff you've never seen or heard of.
Double gold at the Zimbabwean Spirit Awards.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly right. Thank you. Precisely. So and it's not unique to us. And by the way, now look at movie posters. Look at all the sites that they name in there. It used to be there were 3 or 4. Roger Ebert and the New York Times and the LA Times, Variety, a couple things like that's it. Now there's 1,000 of them. There's no so it loses some power in that, but at the same time, once you have started, once you're in a business that is about exposing consumers to judgments, to ratings, the wider the pool of people doing it, ultimately, the better it is for everybody. Not that, listen, you and I both know this, 90% of those ratings are not trustworthy in the slightest. Although I will say that the Zimbabwe Film Board gave my TikTok short a very high rating.
I mean, John and I have had this conversation a lot, and Bear, I think you've been kind of, and you know where I'm going with this.
Mm-hmm.
We have to we tell people, look, they thank us for doing this, right? And they said, what can we do always to help you? I said, the best thing you do is share our social media content.
Yeah.
We are begging people to share it. A print publication puts it out, and I'm not going to single Aficionado out. That is immediately put up, and I see it with the end of the year ratings. On the end of the year list is the place where I always see it. Where though, and look, there are very good prints. There are very good onlines. There are not very good prints, and there are not very good onlines. But I'm constantly seeing the print ones are the ones that there never has to be a reason to share. The other thing is I worked in terrestrial radio for a while, and I can tell you there's also a big preference still for they look at terrestrial radio is something better. Maybe that's changing in the last couple of years a little more, but go back 2017, terrestrial radio was a lot bigger, and it was considered a quote unquote more superior platform. It was more snazzy back then as well. Now it's really not profitable, terrestrial radio. I can tell you that.
But part of that isn't that part of that because you at the era that you're talking about specifically now, obviously there's a lot of shifts.
Right.
But the print media and something like terrestrial radio or cable television you can apply a metric to them. There are reliable standards of gauging their achievement. Their distribution, the number of eyeballs they attract, where they end up. Those things are definable. So when you're talking about support, because don't forget, for listen, all of us here understand that in order to keep doing the things that we love, we have to have some support. You guys all have brand sponsors behind you. I have a brick wall, but that's because I'm a schmuck. But the thing is that if you need to be able to some degree show your audience and physical things and stuff that people can access without having to go hunting for it. In other words, that's already out there, has a head start in that. And for the foreseeable future, that's that edge is going to be there. Where I think we're shifting away from that. Look, if you think about it, from when we started Cigar Aficionado to now, mobile iPhones weren't big, smartphones, people didn't walk around with tablets, and there wasn't. We exist in an age when there is a fire hose of information coming at you, and you have to figure out how you're going to take your sips from it. Whereas the things like conventional media. Turn on your television if you still have one. turn on the radio in your car if you're not listening to a podcast by your telephone, or a magazine that physically arrives. Listen, I don't want to, again, I don't want to be the defender, but there's something about holding a magazine. There's a physical quality. That was one of the things that Cigar Aficionado accomplished, and a lot of other people wanted to emulate. In other words, the feel of that. It's not even the permanence, because who keeps magazines these days, but the weight and the feel of it lent some authority to what was there, and by its very nature, so much of social media is ephemeral, right? So it, like, you see something, and how do you actually seize on that to walk into the retailer and say, hey, have you got this? Let me show you this social site that may or may not be something that you managed to save. It's not the same. So I think there's an evolution, but we need to acknowledge that there is merit to being physical. And by the way, I think that's part of the charm of cigars and cigar stores. The community that they offer, people seeing each other, holding the cigar. In other words, I don't want us to get to a stage where the majority of consumers are making decisions by remote control, regardless of whether it's because they're listening to a review that any one of us posted, but they're making their selection based on that, instead of being part of a community, walking into a humidor and looking at a place and touching and feeling cigars and going, oh, this is the one I want to buy. This is the one I want to smoke. So, the very nature of why cigars and cigar stores appeal to people has something to do with that aspect of the experience not being part of the overwhelming cyber channels of our lives.
Well, you talk about the charm of the cigar industry, and I think that the charm of cigars, kind of lent its way to where all of us have a drastically different take on and spin on how we evaluate cigars. So, for instance, we talked about how, Cigar Aficionado and then later Thor brought in these other lifestyle pieces and counterparts. And then guys like John, Dennis, and Tripp took it a step further with pairing. Our own Dave Burke of the Cigar Coop Coalition did music and cigars. So,
great idea.
Tripp, Dennis, John, when you guys started doing the pairings with it, what kind of what additional pathway did this give cigars to not just only the cigars that you guys were smoking and talking about, but also libations and other sorts of things that you were talking about?
Well, I'm going to start by saying John started this. John was in it before me. Yep. I just stole the idea from him. With his blessing, of course, but
you mean the music pairing specifically? Is that what you're saying?
No, booze pairing.
Libations.
For me, I have had people tell me they watch our show who don't smoke cigars, and somebody's watching right now that watches our show that doesn't drink. Like, it's not about the crossover. I think it's just that we. And again, inspired by John, I've always kind of geeked out about stuff, right? Like, if I'm drinking a beer, I want to know where that beer came from. I want to know the story behind it, and how did the guy who makes beer for a living start making beer for a living? And then kind of naturally, cigars are the same way. I want to know about the guy who's making the cigar, the guy who created this brand, who put his blood, sweat, and tears into it. Like, what made him do that? And for me, there's just there's a lot of crossover, not necessarily as I talked about in the audience necessarily, but just in the the stories themselves behind these kind of things.
And to Tripp's point, really, this I think is it's the other side of the coin when we talk about lifestyle. These are things that are people doing outside of that classic lifestyle space where you talk about luxury lifestyle. This is the everyman kind of lifestyle. What do you drink? What do you eat? What do you do when you're not doing your job or spending time with family, when you're investing your time in cigars or something else? And I think it gives a voice to the people that sit some of us don't have a local shop, for example, right? So it kind of empowers certain people that don't have access to that to have a voice and be a little bit more informed on whether it's spirits or even non-alcoholic stuff.
Yeah, that was in my head, and I forgot to mention it. That when Thor was talking about it, it made me think about, like, I think part of the reason I connected so much with John's show, Sharing Our Pairings, that eventually became my show somehow, was because, like, reading Cigar Aficionado, I started reading Cigar Aficionado probably like most people within a couple months of getting interested in cigars. But then, like, I found myself flipping past the story about the new Rolls Royce and this $10,000 humidor and this $4,000 lighter that's like, I can't even look at this stuff because, like, it's just so opulent to me and so outside of anything I'll ever see. And then I saw these guys drinking beer and drinking whiskey, just smoking cigars, shooting the shit, talking about, like, why this interests them. And I think part of it is that kind of connecting with me, being that, you know, Cigar Aficionado, for everything that's great about it, I am not the demographic. I never have been, and I never will be. And I feel like this is a show for people in our demographic that, you know, you're not going to be driving a Rolls Royce anytime soon.
Well,
and I mean,
go ahead, John, please.
I was going to say the impetus, but by starting a pairing show, and, you know, this goes back to 2013, is I kind of looked around, and you know, at that point there was quite a lot of beer shows, and there was well-established whiskey shows that have been doing it for many years. And I was actually looking for a show that specifically did cigars and any sort of libation, and there just wasn't. I mean, there were certainly plenty of print articles about alcohol and beer and high-end spirits and, you know, regular beer, but there was no show out there at all talking about the two together. And to me, that was sort of a huge miss, because at that point, on the regular, every time I got together with my friends, anytime I went to the trade show, we were always pairing something, whether it was non-spirit related with, you know, Coop and I talk endlessly about Coke pairings in cigars, or pop, or whatever. And so it just struck me at the time that why isn't there a show on that? And I just decided that, well, if there isn't a show, then I guess I should start a show. And it just kind of grew from there, because to me, it was just kind of the natural thing that anytime I saw people enjoying cigars, it was almost always with something. And, it, you know, again, it didn't have to be alcohol related. There's plenty of people drinking whatever, you know, Dr. Pepper, root beer, Coke, whatever they wanted with their cigar. And we just wanted
Protein
a space
shakes.
to be able to talk about that. What was that, Drew?
Protein shakes,
whatever it might be,
my God.
cheese, whatever it might be.
Well, I think I'm comfortable with this metaphor, and Georgia, please don't take exception to this as the defender of CA like you have been. But, like, I think what, for me personally in my journey, like, Cigar Aficionado was the window, right? It was the window into this world of cigars and the people behind it, and this level of, to Tripp's point, this level of luxury that, you know, you only kind of dream about and see in movies, for at least from where I was sitting, you know, this poor kid from El Paso, Texas, and everything. But then the next level, you know, I crack open a copy of Cigar Press, and then all of a sudden there's price ranges, and a range that I could afford. There was beer, and beer that I had never heard of, right? So again, it was this window, but it was also, it made it accessible. And then Half Wheel and Cigar Coop start, and then it's like even more, there's more information. So, like, it's just like, it was just kind of this, it was like this stair step for me of knowledge and accessibility that I just only had a glimpse of with Cigar Aficionado. And granted, I wouldn't have found Cigar Press without Cigar Aficionado. I wouldn't have logged into Cigar Coop or Half Wheel if it hadn't been to it, you know. And I wouldn't even think about pairing the stuff or what those pairings actually look like. I read about it in Cigar Press, and I read about it in Cigar Aficionado, but now I hear John and Tripp drinking and talking about it at the same time. So it just became this, it became more and more accessible. And that's why I kind of framed the question the way I did. If the stylistic niche that we've all created in our own little corners of cigar media has really kind of paved the way and made it more accessible and therefore surpassed it. I guess most of y'all still disagree that it still hasn't surpassed print media. But that's kind of where I was kind of going, where I kind of came from when I was framing the question with it. So here's my next point, or my next question with this.
Can I answer that question about surpassing it?
Sure, please. Yeah, please go ahead.
I think collectively, online media has surpassed print. But the fact is, Cigar Aficionado is just such a juggernaut that one media site I don't think is going to catch up anytime soon in terms of readership.
Right.
I think collectively more eyeballs are on online media, but it's split out a much wider.
But Tripp, I think that's actually the beauty of it, is that
I agree.
In other words, this diversity of voices, like what I described as the fire hose, is out there. Yeah, collectively, sure. So we haven't achieved the singularity where cyber reviews and cyber commentary about all things related to it have made print for better or for worse. Anybody that's actually publishing a magazine these days probably feels like the elephant walking through the jungle with 1,000 arrows in it, right? It's dead, but it doesn't know it yet, right? But the thing is that there's something about that. There's always going to be space for somebody that publishes a thing you can hold in your hand, whether it's a quarterly or it's an annual or something like that, that has this quality that you can relate with. But it's not, that day is coming sooner rather than later, where there's fewer and fewer and fewer of those things, and we don't have the ability to put them out as regularly. But people are going to be using, electronic media every day, all the time. But can I ask a question that is only adjacent to the things that we're talking about? Do you guys think that the sort of the way that all of these things embraced whiskey has led a generation away? In other words, do you think that the rise of brown spirits, in particular American whiskeys of every stripe, is one of the things that led to the collapse of craft beer?
Yes.
So in other words, the cigar aficionado initially, but then cigars in general are the gateway drug into all of these things. And once you discover them, but I think that this enormous embrace of brown spirits has caused an entire generation of people to skip over being into beer.
Yes, I completely agree. Absolutely.
I would have a different take on that, actually. I think the beer industry got people disinterested in craft beer.
That's actually partially fair, because I think they flooded the market with shit product, stupid names, stupid prices, and completely alienated everybody that was interested in the product.
But Erron, you're describing the cigar industry in 96, 97, and 98.
That's kind of what I was. That's where I was going.
I'm describing the cigar industry in 2024 as well. The cigar industry is in such disarray.
No, don't do that. Stupid names.
I'm sorry. That's the case. That's where we're at right now. But that's what happened with beer. I mean, it really did. It just became so flooded with poor product. Like I was so into beer at one point as well. And then it just became like a wasteland of like, I keep trying all of this stuff and none of it is really any good and stuff like that.
Deal, right?
Yeah. And it's like, I can't. And
$30
it's like
4-packs.
Yeah, exactly. These 4-packs are ridiculously priced. I can't do it. Even if I want to try to buy one, it's a ridiculous price. It's like, I don't even want to try it anymore. It's like, I'm kind of just done with it. So I had some brands that I know I liked, and then some of those started to fade away because the product wasn't the same as what it was previously. So I think the beer industry did it to themselves, and the spirits industry gained in that area because they started ramping up and doing their thing. But I think the spirits industry is going to run into the same thing. They're kind of starting to head that way. They're on their way. Distillery, and you have some of these, major producers that everybody is taking from to be able to create their own things, and a lot of it's the same stuff, and there's not really differentiators and things like that. So it's going to go in waves through the different industries until they, some of the newcomers, they fall back out. It comes back down to a smaller size. Maybe people find out if they're actually producing good products still or not, and people are going to stick around or they're going to leave, and then they have to rebirth themselves again or not. So I think that's kind of, it's moving. It's kind of, we're just kicking the can down the road to different industries here.
Yeah, I thought
anything that people consume to make themselves happy, quality will always out. And
Yes.
And by the way, it doesn't matter if you have a bad name or not, because people will embrace a product which is organically quality and fairly priced, even if it's expensive, as long as the value
there's value there
is justified. Exactly.
To Erron's point, Diageo just posted an alarming massive shrinkage in their and I think that's a warning sign for the spirits industry across the world that they are not immune to that whole market of, we're outpacing the product that we're producing, and we're not producing it with the same level of care and quality that we used to, and the market is kind of wisened up to that. And so I think,
but not to defend Diageo, because they're certainly they employ stormtroopers and everything else. But let's be clear: Diageo's poor results, the things that have happened right now, are primarily due to what's happening in China, not to what's happening in this country. And let's not forget that Diageo was late to the boom in American whiskey. They were always dominant, and they even at the rise of the American brown spirits boom and the coattail effect of that for rum from everywhere, Diageo was late to the party. Diageo is as bad as Marvin Shankin and Cigar Aficionado going, no, we don't need electronic media. People will still buy my magazine. So they're, don't necessarily regard them as a bellwether. And by the way, luxury is always there. There are cycles about aspects of this, but again, the truth is that quality always outs. Like, Diageo can have trouble, LVMH can have trouble, Kering can have trouble, but look at Hermes. They continue to kick ass because people understand this thing they hold in their hands and how magnificent it is, and what they're creating, what they're committed to, and the fact that their product has this extraordinary lifespan. So, I don't want to, I don't want other people's problems to become like we should accept it as a blueprint. I do agree that we don't want the business, but sorry, Bear, I don't mean to do this, but Erron, tell me about the stupid names. In other words, when you say that, I said that you were describing when you're talking about beer, you were describing the cigar market in the tail end of the boom of the 90s, and you're talking about it in 2024. Who's, you don't necessarily have to name names, but who's making those same mistakes? I know that's why I love it. I mean, that's
look at that. Peach Force, Voodoo Rangers Peach Force, as an example, which is a great beer. Don't get me wrong, love the beer. Funny name, but for some people, for people that are just getting into the beer industry and just learning about beers, that it may put them off because they don't know. Like, what does that mean? What does that mean to you if I tell you Peach Force? What does that tell you about the product? Not a whole lot.
And in some ways, better taste like peaches is what it tells me.
Yeah, but you know what? Just to argue that for 1 second, Peach Force doesn't mean any less than Youngling does if you're a new guy getting into beer.
Agreed.
Right? So, in other words, it's everything is the way you frame it and how you tell the story. The problem is cartoony. Like, I have a problem with people using, death and weapons and destructions and stuff like that. I don't want the cigar industry to embrace, we're all tough guys and weapons and names like that, because I don't think that those are conducive to, you know, the vibe of, you know, what the comradeship that cigar culture fosters.
Well,
But
I believe you posed the question to Aaron. He hasn't answered yet, so I wanted to give him the opportunity to do it. So
Yeah,
exactly. Thank you.
I'll follow up on George's question. So maybe a detriment from online media is the calling for new things all the time, right? And cigar brands have bit on that to, I don't know why they would listen to us now in regards to that. They don't listen to anything else we say, but they just continually produce new stuff because that's what they think the market wants, and they are not actually building their brand. So not to give Mike too many pats on the back, but he builds his brand kind of the right way, right? He's focusing on a product, and he's not releasing 4 new blends every year, things like that. You know, he's taking his time and doing his thing, and that's kind of how the industry was, you know, prior to, I think, the digital presence and things like that. So now these brands seem to be wanting to just pump out brands, and there's not really any kind of building to them. And now it's more of a, let's see if we can throw some spaghetti at the wall, see what sticks. If it doesn't, no big deal. We're going to produce the same blend with a half a leaf difference next time anyway, and we'll see if that one works. So they kind of just keep doing that. And it's just
new for the sake of being new.
Correct.
And by spaghetti at the wall, you mean Sunday gravy, right? That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean,
Aaron, that was the nicest
yeah.
thing I've ever heard you say about me, man. Thank you so much.
Don't get used to it, please.
Your cigar still got a 5.35.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the case. Is that it's just there's so many new stuff that there's not really, like, I long for the time when somebody might come out with one blend in a year and say, you know what, this came out because it was ready to come out, not because I needed to release something this year, kind of a thing.
Aaron.
Yes.
That is what you're talking about is the days when the trade show mattered. The trade show was the place where people went to learn what somebody had been, you know, what one of their cigar gods had been working on since they had last seen them, and they had a reasoned period of time. You know, in other words, they could watch what's happening in the fall and see what's going on, and in springtime they could create something cool. And by the time you got to the trade show at the end of summer, they had something that was interesting. Depending upon who they were, in other words, what their level of authority was in the industry, people would walk by their booth and go, oh, that's nice. And maybe 2 years later, they would stop in and say, oh, you're still here and you're still doing that. And they would embrace, and a brand would slowly grow organically. And people would, you know, certain brands would have the benefit of either a local market where they were already popular, sometimes by virtue of a great rep, sometimes by virtue of a great relationship with a series of stores. But it would take hold, and slowly that would spread. And what would happen at the trade show is people would exchange information about that and say, yeah, this is really a winner. It's doing great, everything else. But it took you did not achieve overnight success. The most important point, though, was that you went to the trade show to see, okay, what's new? But it was once a year at one given time. Now the people can make up a story and launch a brand in a matter of weeks if they want to, and especially if they're talking about your strategy, Aaron, where they make a minor change, if at all, at the factory, and all they do is change the trade dress, and it's a new, whether it's a joke or a serious attempt. You know, in other words, there are still manufacturers that are trying to sell traditional legacy frame products, you know, like my grandfather was a farmer, and my mother rolled cigars at the kitchen table, and all this kind of stuff. We know that there's really only a handful of people who can honestly tell that story, but consumers still buy it. But the thing is, the vehicles exist now to launch all of these things into the marketplace, and you can't expect manufacturers not to want to take advantage of it. The question is, are they taking advantage of it with an honest product, or is it just something which is like, who gives a shit? Let's find out if they'll buy it.
Yep.
So to go into this topic, I think this is a great segue into the last point of last point of topic number one, which is the watering down. We've talked about the watering down of beer. We've talked about the watering down of even brown spirits now. and we've talked about the watering down of cigars, and George did a great connection point of the boom to now, and Erron made the point that it's even happening now in 2024. We all represent different stylistic niches within cigar media. Have we, as a group, being cigar media, as the stylistic niche hit its apex? Is there more meat still left on the bone, or are we now on the downslope of cigar media, of the cigar industry coverage?
Well, there seems to be a lot of inexperience going on right now, with people coming out with new blogs or even products, I mean, look at a lot of the social media. You got these girls on there with, hundreds of thousands of followers, and they're just wearing underwear, and that's what people are paying attention to, I guess. So I don't know. I mean, that's a tough question as far as people that are serious about it and into the culture of cigars and, enjoy the product, or I don't know. I mean, I think we all do cover it pretty well, but now it seems to have taken this turn for the worse, in my opinion.
Am I allowed to say something now, Bear?
You get like 30 seconds, bro. That's it. And then we got to move forward.
The more people, the better. I don't think I think you could see consolidation, but by no means have we hit the watershed moment where people are going to turn away from it. The consumers want all this stuff as long as it's entertaining, as long as there's value in the content. Look at the things that you guys do. Right, in other words, it's about the tone of voice. It's about your ability to to flex and to bring something new in to the table. People are always going to embrace that, regardless of how they find it. I don't think we've hit the high water mark, and it's going to be receding. I think there's always, in every aspect of this, the proof of the pudding is in the tasting. So quality content will rise to the top, and it will earn more eyeballs. But it's not going to stop people from taking advantage of the fact that they can get into the marketplace, that they can create their show, they can create their vehicle, and start striving to find people's attention. And overall, I can't say that's a bad thing.
Mike, you were my guest last week, and you and your brother were talking about how within the framework of your business, like how you are always striving for the next level and, trying to be innovative and creating more quality, not necessarily quantity, but more quality in all aspects. And that can apply also to your media brand too. What do you think? Do you think we've hit the apex of it, or there's still...
No, I think that there's definitely still room. I think that the reality is that, even when those social media or points come up for marketing, and let's say that they're not really that dialed into cigars, they fade out, man. They don't hang. They're not there 5 years. I mean, I'm looking around this platform here, and I'm seeing guys that have all endured, right? You guys have gone through it. I'm sure that you have. I'm sure that there were years or months at a time where you're like, fuck, what am I doing? This is like, you really got to believe in what you're doing to continue to endure. And more people will do that. And a lot of them are going to fade out, but the real ones will continue to stick through, and they will continue to persevere. So I don't think that the apex is hit. I think that it's going to continue to grow. And getting kind of back to, prior to, when it comes to brands making new cigars, I think that the scary reality is that we get an industry that we have built on consumers that don't really smoke cigars. 90% of the people that watch our shows and listen to us don't smoke at the level that we smoke. Are you kidding? But what do? When something new drops, they'll buy the box, they'll store it, they'll save it, and so until consumers change their buying perspective, the best customers for me on the retail level are guys that come in every other week or every 2 or 3 weeks, and they buy the same box. They buy the same box, same box, same box. I know that guy's a fucking real one, the guy that's dabbling and he's buying 1 or 2 here and there, or he's buying a box of something to save forever. Like, he doesn't smoke at the level that we smoke, and he can quit at any time because it's just not his jam. He's just like those bourbon chasers, like those beer chasers. So what's important is to take those consumers and show them what cigars are about and show them what what we believe in. And hopefully they become a consistent consumer on a particular brand.
Bear, Aaron and I were actually just chatting on something in this area. I'm not going to get into the specifics of the conversation, but a lot of guys, they get into it thinking this is easy, okay? And they discover it's a lot of work, right? It's like let's say they like cigars, but then they say, I want to be a reviewer, I want to do a media side, I want to be an influencer, and they discover it's work, and what do? They fall off. That's happened since I started in 2010. It's still happening now. I don't think it's going to change much. So that's why I don't think, I kind of agree with George. I don't think we've hit this apex. I think this is a normal cycle that we're in right now, that we see this happen. And it's going to go on because ultimately those who are serious about it are going to do a good job. They'll last. So maybe we see more people going towards the video piece than the written piece. I kind of get that because maybe it's a little easier, but I don't see it. I see the problem no matter what the platform is on that. The difference is online, you can get into it a lot cheaper than starting a print publication. So that's why we tend to see it a lot more with online.
Yeah, the difference is on my podcast, I got Coop peddling out drugs almost on a episode basis at this point.
And I still didn't get an invite to your birthday party, by the way. Which not anyone? Yeah, I'm very hurt on that one.
My wife said she's sorry.
In fairness, he didn't. In fairness, he didn't know about it either. It was a surprise birthday party. So.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry to her. And she didn't. I was like, how could Jack get invited and not me?
She said, "Ooh, I fucked that one." Now she's listening. So.
All right, all good.
I apologize.
Oh, it's all good. I wouldn't blame you. I'll blame him still.
So, before we go into the next topic, let's break this up with one of our fun segments, which, of course, is our presidential trivia segment, brought to you by United Cigars, featuring La Giana Havana, distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, the Firecracker, and the highly acclaimed Atabey, Byron, and now Alfonso lines from Selected Tobacco. Smoke one today and start living united. So with all the cigar media contingent here tonight, I thought it would be fun to talk about a media piece when it comes to presidential trivia. So everyone here, unless you're living under a rock, has heard of the infamous Watergate scandal. So here is a simple question about the Watergate scandal. Who first reported the Watergate scandal? Was it A, Jim Murray, the LA Times, B, Bob Woodward of the Washington Post, C, Alfred Lewis of the Washington Post, or D, A.M. Rosenthal of the New York Times? Coop?
I know I'm wrong on this, but I'm going to say Woodward.
Woodward?
Nope.
I'm going to say Bob Woodward,
Nope.
Yeah. But I think I'm wrong on this.
I was going to say, I bet Coop or George knows that.
But I think I'm wrong on this
Because I
one.
definitely
Because I'm
No.
Something's telling me I'm wrong on this one.
There's a solid D in there somewhere.
Yeah, I'm reasonably confident it was the Post, and I think it was C, not B.
Yeah,
It wasn't Woodward. It was not Woodward. It was another reporter for the Post, because they were what if I understand the question correctly, it was who actually broke the story that there was a burglary at the DNC.
Correct. Who broke the story?
And it was a Post beat reporter, not Bob Woodward. So you said Lewis, right?
C was Alfred Lewis, correct, of the Washington Post. Any other answers?
I'm going with George. C.
I'm going B.
Was
it B, Woodward?
Woodward. Okay.
I'm staying.
No one's taking the bait on the New York Times or LA Times. So yes,
No.
It was a Washington Post reporter, and yes, it was the name of Alfred Lewis, who was the police beat reporter for the Washington Post. He was a
beat reporter.
Yeah, he broke the story, and then Woodward wrote on it the following day, and weeks and months, obviously leading up to through the whole scandal and everything. Coincidentally enough, the LA Times and New York Times also had exclusives on different parts of the story throughout the weeks and months too.
Woodward was tied to he was tied to identifying Deep Throat, right?
Correct.
That was what. Yeah. Okay. That's. I knew it was something.
Well, it wasn't. No. It wasn't. It wasn't that Woodward was tied to identifying Deep Throat. It's that Woodward and Bernstein were the guys that Deep Throat reached out to because
Correct.
they had been reporting on the larger consequences of this. In other words, it very quickly became not a local beat reporter story about a break-in at the Watergate. It became the fact that these guys, and they were the living embodiment of Jimmy Breslin's The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight. In other words, the guys that were hired to do this, and the fact that they had a Cuban connection drove everybody nuts.
So I had a quick question just across the board, a show of hands or eyes or however you want to say it. Like who here has actually broken a story on their various media platforms where nobody else had it? It was an exclusive.
Leaked the story or broke it?
What's that, Coop?
Leaked or broke it?
Oh, leak. I thought you said beat the story. That's
Broke
a
it.
different one altogether.
Broke it.
Well, okay, because we broke the story on CigarCon getting canceled because it was leaked out to me the night before, so I had it first, but I wasn't given an exclusive on it. So basically, I knew the timing the email was going out and everything, and I put the story out like the second I knew the email was going out.
I've had guests talk about new products that they hadn't talked about anybody else about on my show. So
but that's not a story to me. In reality, that's marketing.
Thanks.
I know it sounds. Yeah, no, I'm not trying to knock you, but that's why I didn't include that. I didn't. No, I mean because we've seen the games. We can go with games that people played with that. That's why. But I don't know. I've been told I've had exclusives, and then I've known retailers have known about it for 3 or 4 weeks. So it's hard to tell with that. That's why I said that. Yeah.
Gotcha. John, you had a thought?
Yeah, I broke. I mean, it's cheating because I'm Canadian, but I broke the piece on the plain packaging up in Canada, and I broke the piece on the backroom dealings that led to lounge legalization within Alberta.
Oh wow. This is some big deal topics.
Yeah, but only relevant to Canadians, so it's not really that big of a deal.
Erron or Thor, did you guys ever break anything on Cigar Press?
No, I wouldn't say I broke anything. A lot of first feature stories or interviews with guys that are just coming out. I think
I've
like
got a lot of
Pete
those.
but other than that, nothing like breaking, especially being in print. I mean, it's not like by the time I get it, the story, and then it gets out into print, then it's kind of old news. So we kind of don't go for that angle.
I mean, John did break the story that Cigar Aficionado did a hack piece on Nat Sherman and
that is true. Altria. I took a lot of flack for that.
It was an epic editorial, man.
Oh, wait. Did I break the story on the shipping of Fuente Padron? Well, some people said I did. I guess some people
I would
said
say you broke that.
Some people said I caught. Some people I don't know if I did, and I'll be honest because it was like some retailer actually put it out there already. So
I think you might have, as far as official registered media, I think you might have been the guy that hit first with what was happening. Well, but I'll take it back further than that. I'm the guy that convinced Marvin to tell the story of the birth of Fuente Opus X.
Wow,
there you go.
Since I was, involved in it in the first place. But, I mean, I had to sell that there was something there.
It seems very obnoxious now, like looking back, like how you had to convince him to tell that story, which is crazy in retrospect.
Well, and the COVID to the thing is that Cigar Aficionado had been writing about it for almost 2 years before Fuente was actually really shipping Opus in any quantity at all. And Marvin specifically, because I've been going back and forth to the DR and spending time with Carlito like every other month, and in some instances twice in a month. He said, "You tell Carlito when you go to see him now that there's not one more word about Fuente Opus X until he ships product into a bunch of retailers around the country." And he said, there's a fucking fatwa on saying the word Puente Opus. Nobody called it Puente Opus X then. It was just Opus X. Said, we're not another word until some product gets released.
All right. Well, that was our presidential trivia segment brought to you by United Cigars, featuring La Giana Havana, distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, the Firecracker, and the highly acclaimed Atabey, Byron, and now Alfonso lines from Select Tobacco. Smoke one today and start living united. So getting into the next topic here, I wanted to give everyone the opportunity of, we talked about if it kind of hit, if our stylistic approaches and the stylistic niche of cigar media has hit its apex. But I wanted to give everyone the opportunity of where do you think each medium or stylistic niche actually stands in terms of importance? We've kind of, Coop and a lot of us are to some degree are in agreement that print is relatively still king. But what about where our different stylistic approaches are rank in terms of importance? And, Thor, you're obviously in print, so that kind of goes with my first point. But where would you guys think that your particular platforms rank in terms of importance?
I don't know if one's more important than the other. It's just a different avenue, for different types of consumers to go down. They find their niche, that something they relate to, and they kind of follow that. I don't know if I'd say one's more important than the other. It just offers a different avenue for people to go down.
Okay.
I agree with that, other than I'm probably at the bottom. I agree with that, but I'm probably at the bottom. I just want to make people laugh and entertain people. But I fully support what Thor was saying, that it's really about the individual consumer. You find something you like and you stick with it and support the thing that entertains you.
Well, like Tripp, Mike, you and I are podcasters. But they offer something very specific. Dennis and him offer something very specific in the way that they cover the industry. While you and I have this very general approach, would you say that ours is that's a plus because we have a little more broader of a spectrum, or would that, in terms of ranking of importance, or would you say that it's below because they are very specific in what they do?
I don't think necessarily as far as ranking is concerned. I think that the scary part is when it comes to our platforms is we definitely have more ability to tap into viewers at a faster rate, right? The question is, will they sustain? So, I think that as important print is, and even though Tripp, you matter, bro, you matter. So don't.
Thanks,
I think that they're all an integral part for sure, but there's definitely something to be said about having fast access and being on somebody's phone that's in their hand, the majority of the time. We all do it, it's a terrible addiction one way or the other, and tapping into that, I think, is huge. And it takes one particular controversial back and forth for something like that to catch fire, and that's kind of the culture that we're in at this point. And it's not like you're not going to see that, unfortunately. Like, hey, did you see what was said in this magazine? No, that's not, you're not going to catch that. Those people are guys are just going to that consumer is a consumer that's chilling out, just kind of relaxing, and enjoys going through pages, So I would say that as far as more viewers, we're currently at that advantage point. Have we capitalized on that? I don't think so. I don't think that, for me especially, I don't think that I'm where the viewership is so big that's like, wow, this is absolutely incredible, but I check all my news when it comes to any type of cigar industry stuff. It's usually Half Wheeler Coop, right? They're the guys that are going to release the intel fastest, and it's going to get to everybody remarkably fast. So
first,
Yeah, exactly. So and that's what I kind of like to cover as well and discuss is what's going on currently in the industry. And then I like to tell the people that are doing stupid things to go fuck themselves. So, I think that's kind of fun for me, I guess. But like your approach, for me personally, is just kind of unrivaled, dude. The way that you speak to people, the memory that you have, the way that you can kind of conduct on these platforms and on your show. Like every time I get off or every time I'm done watching or whatever, I'm like, damn, man, how the hell did he do all that? So and there and again, I don't think that you've hit nearly the amount of viewers that for one you deserve, for two that have discovered you. And so but keep doing what you're doing because that potential definitely exists where you can be, gigantic, man. Absolutely gigantic.
Thank you for that, Mike.
I think to the core of your question, Bear, in terms of importance, I think when you talk about industry breaking news, I think Coop and Half Wheel are considered the landing pages for the industry in terms of breaking news. That is, if there's important, timely, or relevant information, that's the first place where every single person in the industry is going for to get their news and to get it first. And so in terms of, again, timely, important stuff, I don't think the importance of that can be understated. I think that is very clearly where people are, like Mike was saying, people are on their phones refreshing those pages 15, 16, 17 times a day, hoping for the latest juicy hot gossip or, insider information or breaking news of the industry. And they're doing it all year long. Everybody in the industry, when they get on the airplane, when they land from the airplane, first thing they're doing is they're refreshing those pages to see what they missed. So I think in terms of industry news, no question. Industry people in the inside that's kind of their number one for sure.
Well, here's a hot take that I have, and we'll get to Coop's consecutive days of coverage. And I agree with the point that Half Wheel and Coop, again, really capture the news better than anybody. But here's my hot take about this. To you and Aaron, does developing palates have the very best in terms of quantity and quality of coverage? When you consider the video piece, the podcast piece, and the website piece of reviews and news, there is daily coverage on all of those platforms via developing palates. Do you guys have, in terms of importance, again, my hot take is it's arguable that you guys are at the top concerning what you guys put out. Agree or disagree?
I'll let Aaron answer that, but I'd put us around a 6.25, 6.1 thereabouts.
Hints of minerality.
Hints of minerality.
That's right. I mean, we're nowhere near the top. Like volume wise, we're not even playing with a majority of the sites out there. So I'm not going to say it in regards to that. But like you said, we do try to hit kind of all the mediums there in regards to ways people can digitally consume it. So if they like to read, they have that. If they want to watch, they can do that. If they just want to listen, they can do that. So where I see that there's value is that when we get a comment on a YouTube video or we get a comment on the podcast, is that, hey, I'm smoking this cigar right now. I agree with you here. I disagree with you here. I like this. You guys didn't like it, kind of thing. So the fact that someone can sit down to smoke, they can Google it and they find us, or they go to our page to look for it. Either way, however they do it, like it's at their fingertips right away, right? If they want to do that in print, they can go to their boxes of, back issues and say, now I got to try to figure out which issue this was in and see if I can pull this out and see it. So it's there at their fingertips if they want it. And I like that we're able to provide that, and we wanted to be able to do that so that we could kind of fit people's preferences on how they want to consume it. So we try to do that, and that's what we like to do. So, but definitely not towards the top, but we want to be available to people that are looking for the information.
Gotcha. Now, Coop, not to pitch you against Thor and George here, but I will. How many consecutive days of coverage, and does the news coverage of Cigar Coop and considering we keep lumping you and Half Wheel together, and does that rank over the terms of importance? Again, you were of the opinion earlier in the show that print is still king, but in the terms of news and consumption and information, is Cigar Coop more important?
All right. Yeah, it's 44-16 is the streak.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
That's a lot of days, man.
Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you. But there's a lot, like I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks and there's 2 weeks worth of content already done. So I mean, there's things I've done like that, but that's kind of what we've used to have an advantage.
You make no mistake, Coop. You're going to be breaking shit on your vacation too. Like news will come across your wire, and you're gonna write up stuff for it. So
we'll see. We'll see. All right, we'll see. I can't say yes or no.
See what the wife lets him do.
Yeah, I'm under. Yeah, but
listen, guys. I think we got to give both Coop and Charlie, bless his heart, not being here. Sorry about that, but we got to give them their flowers. You guys have successfully snatched away from Cigar Aficionado that you are the source for breaking news. And the thing is, it isn't in this particular instance in terms of respect, like how people are reacting. It's the entire trade. It's not just retailers and forget consumers because they're way behind the curve anyway. It's the trade. Manufacturers go to you and Charlie for news about what's happening. They don't go to Cigar Aficionado. They want Cigar Aficionado to write something about it so it's in their volume of material that's accessible. But when it comes to telling the story first, fastest, and maybe even with a little bit of spin, like a little bit of attitude about how you're telling the story, you guys are the leaders by a country mile. And that's I'm saying that from my relationships with manufacturers and everything. I know who pays attention to who, and it's you and Charlie.
No,
I should say Half Wheel because there's a big, it's more than one person. But you are absolutely like there's no other way to say it. You're an authority.
No, thank you.
And that's earned. That's earned. There's not, in other words, that's not like something that just, you did just by surviving. It's your performance and the respect that you have from the manufacturers in this business. They know you're the guy.
Said.
Thank you. It's gotten tougher in the last few years to be in this space, and I mean, there's still, unfortunately, there are publications, and I will say Half Wheel does not do this, that embargo stories from us for up to 48 hours, which in the digital world is absolute ludicrous. I mean, look, exclusives are part of the game. I get it. A 48-hour embargo, it's ridiculous. And, I talked about this the other night. There's a use case that I had in terms of how I work. So there were a couple of stories that were happening last week. And the big story that happened was that STG did a discontinuation of 4 lines. And typically that discontinued announcements do not flow to the media. They flow to the retailers. I happen to have some retailers who are very, very supportive of me to get me this information. And I happen to get this. And I worked that story for several hours where there's things I had to go research and everything and go do this. Meanwhile, someone's sending me a press release that they gave to someone 24 to 48 hours beforehand. Am I going to spend time on that? Or am I going to spend time on something I know that I'm going to have that probably, I'm assuming Charlie would be the only other one who would have it. Maybe one or other people would have it. Of course not. I'm going to work on that piece where it makes sense. Not someone who's decided that they were going to give it to, a story to me 24 to 40 hours late. It's just, I can't work like that. I can't, if I'm constantly dependent on cutting and pasting press releases, which I don't believe in, we don't do, you might as well not be in the news space. And I know, Erron, you and I have talked about this, but that's not your focus. You've always said that. That's not your focus. But if you want your focus, you're gonna have to put some effort into it. And
For sure.
and as far as that goes, you're gonna have to. There's things you have to be smart about how you spend your time on. And I think unfortunately, I think a lot of us in the online media, and I'm gonna put myself into this. We've covered stuff that should have never been devoted to cycles on it. I mean, it just be straight. There's stories that I don't know why we've invested. I don't know why I invested time in some of these things throughout the. And I'm not, and I'm not talking about major releases or anything, but there's stuff that just one-offs. I'm like, 20 box releases. We're really covering this stuff and spending time on this. It's just we can't do it. We just can't be everything to everybody. So it's gotten tougher.
You need content. You need content.
I was going to say you got to keep up that streak somehow.
Well, I haven't had to keep up the streak that way. I've eliminated content. I've been able to eliminate content. Like, I'll tell you what, store exclusives is a dead end. I've said it. It's a dead end road to you don't get any numbers off covering store exclusive stuff. You want to do it once in a while, that's fine. There's other things that I've just said, no, we can't spend the cycles on this stuff anymore. And because I had too much in this streak. I mean, I being honest with you. So I've gotten into a more manageable thing right now.
I want to say one thing before too much time goes by. By saying that you and Charlie have cornered the market in this space, and I pay all my respects and bow down, and I'm really, really impressed and really, really pleased. But I also want to say, Erron, I think your approach and the things that you have built, that's a different. You're working a different lane.
Yes,
and you're attracting people for a different reason, and it doesn't diminish what you do or how you do it at all, because people talk about it all the time. You make a difference. In other words, it may not be that you can yet say everybody's walking in going, holding up their phone and showing you doing a review, but you have an impact, and you have developed a niche which you kind of own, right? And there, believe me, I guarantee you that there's people out there right now that are trying to figure out how they can do something to steal some of your audience. So don't take that I'm saying that Charlie and Coop have cornered the market in terms of the breaking news business. Okay. As slighting your approach and your brand and how successfully you have developed it. I'm telling you, I'm in awe.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, and news is not our thing. Like, we will publish some news, but it's really not our focus at all. I mean, that's really a full-time job to kind of stay on top of that and be able to write it as unique content, right? We can publish the press release as is, kind of a thing, and that's quick to do and easy, but to dedicate the time to writing it, adding backstory, historical references, all that kind of stuff, that takes a lot of time, and I just don't have the cycles to make that happen. But yeah, our focus is the reviews, and to do it as a team and to show the different perspectives. And I think we have the best reviews out there. I just think that's the way it is, and that's our goal, is to try to keep getting better at that and doing it that way. So that's where our focus is at. We use a scoring system that no manufacturer is going to share, because they're going to say they don't understand it, but they completely understand it. But it's not what the industry goes by. So people are going to reference it. They're going to add some numbers to it or take some numbers away to make it fit a 100-point scale, whatever it is. It's not going to work out that way. We knew that going into it. People in the industry have told us we need to change our scoring system to fit the standard that the industry goes by. Not going to do that. Sorry. I know we're not going to get the volume of people that want to see it, but we do what we want to do because we think that's the best way to do it, and we continue to do it that way. So I appreciate you. We are in a niche, yes. We'll stay in that niche. If people want to copy that, that's okay. I think we'll still be able to do it better than them. So we'll just kind of stay in that lane and go as fast as we can.
I want to bring this question over to Thor, and Thor, I'm going to segue it in addition to the next point, because I think you can add on to it, and then I'll let the group kind of comment on it as well. But as far as like respect earned, for example, in terms of importance, which was the initial question, all of us have really great relationships in the industry, and when all of us can walk into a booth, as an example, at the trade show, and there are certain relationships where we have the attention of the manufacturer or the brand owner. But I've observed, and please take this as the compliment that it's intended for. I've observed on several occasions you at the PCA, for example, where you walk into what I would consider some of the heavy hitters in the industry, and those guys stand up for you, and both metaphorically and physically. And I think that's a lot that has got to do with the longevity. You don't have 4,000 consecutive days of news like Coop has, but you have been printing your magazine for almost 2 decades now, and you started with some pretty heavy hitters. I mean, your feature stories were, in your first your first issue were Carlito Fuente and Pete Johnson, for example. But
Yeah.
where do you, again, in terms of importance and where you sit is we're talking about frequency over here in our little sphere. You've said already on this show that you don't have that luxury. How does the term of the importance that you have, and then we're going to segue into reviews because I think that's important as well.
Well, I don't know. As far as importance, it's tough, at least for getting things out in like a timely manner. I mean, it's important to have something that's different, that is an expression of, something that's people aren't used to seeing. So the one thing that isn't that great, is just like I said, the timely fashion that things get out, and it's also kind of like disposable. When you do a print issue, you might publish over the years 100 articles, but they all disappear. People forget that you do them unless you put them online. So in that aspect, being online is definitely important, so you stay relevant and that those articles don't go anywhere. They're easy to find. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that's about it as far as being important. I mean, never really pay attention to it that much.
Well, this is a great segue into reviews, and all of us have an experience with this, either in writing, doing video, commenting, or it being part of, being a part of our individual content in one way, shape, or form. When you all started doing reviews, again, it wasn't anything new for you because, again, the Cigar Aficionado had been doing it, as we kind of talked about earlier in the show. But you guys took a different approach on it. Why are reviews so important in the print space, specifically for Cigar Press, and the way that you do it?
Well, I think it's, the thing about it, we didn't want people to go based off of numbers. I mean, that's great for people that don't know a lot about cigars, but we were trying to attract people that wanted to learn about the cigars. And so if you could read about my take or the magazine's take on what that cigar tastes like, if it sounds good to them, then they'll pick it up, as opposed to just picking it up because this guy said it's an awesome cigar. So they'll read about it, and if it's something that it sounds like they'll like, then they might pick it up. So we're more interested in educating it and trying to get people that really want to learn about cigars, as opposed to just someone coming in with like a top 25 and saying, give me these because they're the best, without knowing if they are for themselves.
Thor, can I say one other thing though? What I think has really been great, and you have continuity. I mean, we're obviously addressing the idea of immediacy versus permanence, but you have made a science of getting out in front and discovering. Maybe science is the wrong word. Maybe you've made an art of getting out in front and finding the next generation of boutique guys that are providing energy and originality and a breath of fresh air in the business. And you're one of the places where cigars appear. And it isn't just necessarily in a review. Maybe there's a story or some aspect about it, but you're giving space to people who are not cracking mainstream media, for lack of a better way to phrase it. And you've done that from the very, very, very beginning. And I think it's fantastic.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, we always tell people we'll put cigars in the magazine, just get them to us and we'll be happy. I mean, there's a lot of, like you said, a lot of these guys don't have the chance, or they don't play the politics or whatever it might be. So we just want to find as many cigars as we can and put them out there. Some are hits and some are misses, but yeah,
it's a great point.
By the way, there's great service. There's great service in publishing the reviews that show who the new frauds are.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is a great point, George, because I actually made a brief list of this, and there, what Thor's publication did for me as a consumer introduced me to brands that now, seem like mainstream, seem like mainstays and everything, but at the time they were very much new to the market. I learned about Blackwork Studio. I learned about Nomad. I learned about Ezra Zion. I learned about Adrian's, which later became Romacraft. I learned about all these other these brands that were just that were non-existent or had such a small piece of the market from Cigar Press. Those were my first introductions to it, and that's the feature article that you did on Abe Flores way back in the day. I went into cigar shops asking for Pinar Del Rio, and people looked at me cross-eyed. They're like, "Yeah, the region in Cuba, I know about that." I'm like, "No, there's a brand called Pinar Del Rio." And then
I think there should be an entire segment of the floor of the trade show that's called "Thanks to Thor."
Yeah.
I mean, Thor, you had one of the most. I mean, I'm going to say it, Bear. You and I've talked about, but I know you put a very big impression on that cover of the young generation.
Yeah, the Usual Suspects. Yeah,
Usual Suspects.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the most influential things that we've seen in the last 15 years. I mean, that's a story that I think everyone remembers and put a lot of those guys, in our minds for the first time.
We've even gone so far as to dedicate like a segment on our show, like who would be the next cover be? What would the next generation?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and everything. So you created a Mount Rushmore, so to speak, that a lot of cigar makers and manufacturers can aspire to be, which is, that was pinnacle. That was pivotal to, and that's thanks to cigar media. It's thanks to Cigar Press. So it's pretty huge. But to get back to the topic of reviews and why we've found such an importance into it, Erron, John, this is the cornerstone, as you pointed out a second ago, Erron, to what developing palates is. Why is that your focus, and why is it so paramount to the way that we, as cigar consumers, consume cigar media?
I'm just going to speak based on my perception of things. Is that I didn't feel that the reviews that were out there were personal enough. I think sometimes the reviews were meant to try to reach as wide of an audience. Say, I think people would like this because of this, instead of just saying these are my opinions and this is what I think. But doing it in this group format where you're getting different opinions from the same entity. So none of us have the same palette, right? When we do our recaps and things like that, you get to see different point of view from multiple people and things like that. And we'll have disagreements. We'll have not arguments, but we'll have, kind of some debates on topics and things like that. But we also didn't want to go down the path of being like nasty and stuff like that, which some sites have done that, where they kind of get personal with people and say some derogatory things that are not, I don't think they'd say that to their face or something like that. So, we wanted to be able to be as honest as we can, say things that we would, because, obviously our names are on these, and we go to the trade show and we walk in front of these people, and there may be times where they say, hey, I didn't really care for that review or whatever, but it's not anything where we're having, words that we're gonna get in a fight or something. But we wanted to be able to say things that we'd be able to say to their face and things like that. So but we want people to be able to understand that this is just our opinion. We're not telling you that you're gonna like it because we think you should, or whatever it is. So but there's likely going to be somebody in the group that you can align with in regards to their thoughts on it once you smoke it, or you've already smoked it and you've seen that. So once you can kind of come up with that connection, then you can figure out whose thoughts you can kind of go along with when that review comes out. You see it's something that you're looking forward to smoking or not, and if you want to chase it down.
Are you saying there are cigar media outlets out there that review harsher than developing palates?
No. Yeah, and I'm sure
more mean-spirited. He means.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With less apathy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Building on. Sorry, go ahead.
Please, John.
I was going to say, building on what Erron said. I think what we strive for is kind of two things. One is authenticity. I think we're being authentic to who we are, and there's a lot of internal dialogue around that about, not being too much of a fanboy about one particular brand or another, despite the fact that we obviously all have personal preferences, like Erron said, and all of our palates gravitate towards a specific way. But as a part of that, we always strive to be truthful in how we're representing what our experience is. And sometimes that means writing things that people's feelings might get hurt. But, like Erron said, I think the key is we're focusing on the product. We're not focusing on the person. We're critiquing the art. We're not critiquing the artist. And so a big part of, I think maybe people don't understand, smoking the cigar is the easiest part of the job. Writing up the review is the most difficult part of the job, because when we have to sit down and sort of take those thoughts and those experiences and translate that into something that's interesting to read and at the same time represents that experience in the sort of most truthful way possible, that can be challenging. And like Erron said, we're not looking to be mean-spirited about it. We're just looking to accurately critique our experience as a cigar smoker in that experience that we reviewed.
Yeah, and we could definitely be harsh at times, but it's not. We're not trying to be mean about it. It's just our honest feelings about a situation or something going on with the cigar or the direction of the brand or something like that as we see it. And none of us, I think, would back down from having the conversation with the brand owner or anybody within the brand about our thoughts on that and why we had that, that thought or why we said that thing. So, we want to be as open as we can. We want to share that information that you might not get from somebody else because they don't want to say that. They don't want to ruin a relationship. They don't want to, for fear of not having somebody send them cigars because they said something bad about somebody and things like that. So, we're not based on, people having to send us cigars so that we can do reviews and things like that. We're okay. We're okay being the consumer. We want to be the consumer, right? We bought the cigars. We're smoking the cigars. We're giving our thoughts on the cigars, and that's as honest as we can be.
Mike, authentic is something that I think that would probably be a theme or a tagline for the way that you conduct business in all of your avenues and everything. I know you don't necessarily formalize reviews, and you almost kind of poke fun at the topic a little bit tongue in cheek sometimes with it. But yet, do you feel that it's still vital to what you do and still vital to the industry, or is your kind of tongue in cheek approach a little bit saying that it is overdone?
I don't know. I think that my focal point, even though it's entertaining and kind of tongue in cheek at times, it's more about educating consumers. Breaking apart things and really showing them where corners were cut, where prices were inflated, those sorts of things. Those are the kind of things that I always find entertaining in this industry. And it's not because I'm trying to verbally attack somebody. It's because I just want to see this industry do better, and that's usually where all that comes from. But every once in a while you do find something that's just absolutely stellar. You're like, damn, this is something else. Whatever they did, whatever their thought process was into creating a cigar, it wasn't just made for a turn. It was made with, hey, how do I make it different? How do I make it taste like something that isn't on market or something to that degree? So, unfortunately, you see more of the former than the latter in this industry. I think that we could all kind of agree on that, but I'm hoping to see that change as this industry evolves in the upcoming decades.
Erron stated a moment ago that he feels that developing palates has the best way to review cigars in terms of, and I think he was speaking more about the scoring system. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, Erron, but what do we feel is the best way to cover and or publish a cigar review?
Erron won't eat sushi and he doesn't like fish at all. I have questions,
right?
Things just don't make sense to me.
So Well, along those lines, what is the best way to publish a cigar review? So Erron and John's approach has been to deliver the content in as many ways possible to give the audience their choice in the way they consume it. So, Erron, John, you probably have metrics on this. What is in terms of what is the best way? But I kind of wanted to get the panel's opinion on as well. So,
I'm with them. Whatever way the consumer wants to consume it, right? Like, if you're into podcasts and you want to listen to all your reviews in podcast form, that's the way to do it, right? I think the best thing we can do is, like Erron and John said earlier, make it available in as many formats as possible. I don't have time to transcript out all of our shows, at least not yet. That's something we're hoping to do eventually. But like, video, YouTube, Facebook, whatever it is that you want to use, go for it.
Yeah, I mean,
as far as the consumer, I mean.
Yeah, I think that is kind of remarkable because, like, we look at our podcast views and our audio downloads and compare that to our video views, and it's not even close. Our audio views are through the roof in comparison. Yeah. So, I would say that audio is important, but so is video. There are people that want to see who's saying, right? And appearance is important, and then there's also like the little shorts, the little clips that you can do and take to drive a consumer to more of your podcast views. So like all of it is definitely important in my opinion. I don't think one in particular supersedes the other. It's you're right. It's the way that you try. It's a shotgun approach as far as finding more consumers and listeners.
So Bear, this is a good point to apologize to you because when I made the comment before about breaking a story on a product, I thought you were asking me that. I didn't realize that was something you said, but it ties very much into what I'm going to say. Reviews are the bread and butter of Cigar Coop. I mean, it's the whole foundation. News is great, but news is transient. In a year, no one's going to remember that I broke a story on a particular cigar. But if I review a cigar and that cigar is from a company and the line is a hit and the line has longevity, people are going back and reading that review over and over and over again. So that's, I think, the most important thing is when you're prioritizing cigars reviews, those are things to consider. It might be really cool to review the new Viaje cigar, right? But when that Viaje cigar disappears for 2 or 3 years, no one's looking for that review. On the other hand, the AJ Fernandez New World review, that's one I've done 10 years ago, and it's still one of the top reviews read every single year. So that's what I'm saying. I think reviews are ultimately the foundation. It builds longevity on these types of things where people are consistently going back and looking at it over and over again. So it's a very, very important piece here. One that that's why I spend so much time on reviews. The only 2 times I don't review cigars during the year are during PCA coverage and Cigar of the Year. Those are the only 2 times I kind of take a little break from it. But otherwise, it's always something that there's going to be content on Coop with.
So I wanted to send this over to George and Thor for an example. So turning the terms to podcasts, so Mike and I are the only ones that are exclusively podcasters here, but the other folks here have adjacent podcasts, while Thor and George, while they've guested on podcasts, don't necessarily have an adjacent podcast. Is the adjacent podcast a necessary avenue for cigar media outlets today and the way that and because of their popular rise?
Go ahead, Thor, and I'll follow.
No, I definitely think so. I mean, it's important because you want, as a media outlet, you want to reach as many people as possible. So yeah, I definitely think so.
Okay.
I think, first of all, reviews, an individual review is not the thing. Building a library of reviews so that they are a source of information and a destination that a consumer can go to is what is vital. And by the way, I would posit that consumers land on the place where they think they have a reviewer that reflects their own approach or their own position vis-a-vis the market and the cigars. So in other words, they choose a source that they have developed some kind of relationship with. And I think that both audio and video reviews have a leg up in terms of building that relationship with your audience. In other words, because of the nature of the way that you tease things out and you talk about them, as opposed to being reductive, people embrace what you have to say and they are ready to go back to that, and you become a trusted source of information. So I believe that the mission should always be to keep doing the yeoman's work of reviewing all of this stuff that's coming out. But not everybody can be like John and Erron are, which is, cutting and abrupt when they need to be. In other words, not everybody that forms an attitude about being the place where you go for cigar reviews is confident enough to express something which is essentially, for lack of a better way to phrase it, overtly negative. In other words, you got to have balls to put out. When companies invest a lot, even big corporate companies that we might think of as soulless and the least original guys in the industry, they put a lot of energy and effort into doing these releases. So, when they're out there, it's like, I don't want to diss the cigar makers that made it or the farmers that grew some of the tobacco that's in it or something like that. In a sense, I'm always hesitant to call out somebody and say, hey, man, you're an idiot. You made a cigar with fucking tobacco that's not fermented right, and it has this horrible taste, but there's a kind of consumer that will embrace that. However, being in the space where you have created this tone of voice, which is, I'm your friend, and I'm going to tell you this cigar is marketing hype, and regardless of whether you like the particular flavors, it doesn't earn its place by virtue of its price and the hype that they've attached to it. That is bold space to occupy, and most of the people that are in the business of creating reviews in the non-print format, because print has a way of haunting you. People can say, "Hey, motherfucker, look at this," and call you out on it. But if it's a part of a podcast or something like that, it has a tendency to it doesn't feel as permanent. So you don't get you don't necessarily get the same kind of impression from it. And look, I was actually thinking about this when we were talking earlier. I wanted to ask the group, is there, in the body of your work, is there a negative review that you made at any point? Doesn't matter, recent or way back when you started or anything. Is there a negative review out there that you think was too harsh? That, in other words, that was maybe less understanding of the efforts of the person who put something out? Is there a review that you think you'd like to walk back a little bit?
No. In fact, I would say there's probably times, George, that I feel like we softball things in the sense that, I do think there's a time and a place to call somebody out on using under fermented tobacco or using, a good example, and Mike can talk to this, is, I've been around enough and I've been to enough factories and I've handled enough tobacco to know the difference between a wrapper that's been cured properly and a wrapper that's been cooked. And so there are certainly times where right off the hopper, that wrapper's been cooked. Now, I don't call it out in the review. I don't, say that because it's not my place to call it out. But, there are times where I think some of that stuff needs to be called out. I think that some of the best practices, right? But I think that stuff, there's times where that crosses the line between the take of someone who's smoking a cigar as a consumer versus someone who is maybe better spent having that conversation one-on-one with the manufacturer to say, look, you and I both know that wrapper was cooked and that was not your best product. And that's probably something best had, behind the scenes rather than up front. One of the things I just want to quickly go back to is Bear was talking about adjacent spaces. And I think what's really interesting is when Cigar Snob puts out a top 25 list or Cigar Aficionado puts out a top 25 list, one of the interesting things that we see, and I'm obviously a very data analytic driven guy, is if we have a cigar that we've recently done a review of that is also in that publication, we often see a lot of cross-pollination where somebody is seeking out other voices on that review.
Second opinions, right?
To get a second or third opinion. So it is kind of interesting to see that we will get a lift as a result of someone reading the publication first and then coming to sort of see other voices and see how they are consistent or not consistent with that take on that particular product, which is really interesting to me.
And it's go ahead. I'm sorry,
George.
Tripp. Go ahead.
Go ahead, George.
No, what I was going to say is that again, what you're coming back to in an oblique kind of way is the power of print and its adjacency. In other words, there's plenty of people who read Cigar Aficionado reviews, who pay attention to the top 25, that are not subscribers to the magazine. They may look at it when they find it in a cigar lounge or something like that, but they're not subscribers. But yet they assign authority, they assign weight to Cigar Aficionado's judgment, and it's one of the things that drives their interest. And yet, what I think is happening, there's this burgeoning audience of people that are out there that are like, listen, man, there's more than one way to evaluate a cigar, and there's more than one way to render judgment about that. And I want to hear these other voices. That's what they're interested in. And what I believe is so great about this is that there are a bunch of people who have created a place where it's known that you can come and they're going to give you a take which, at least on the surface, feels like it comes from a different place than Cigar Aficionado does. So in other words, I think that there are people who go, oh, this is the top rating here, but let's go find out what my friends at Developing Palates say about it, because I trust them in terms of my individual smoking preferences and the way I buy cigars. And that, all of that is great. There's no reason, because that validates actually both media entities, right? In other words, it lends credence to what Cigar Aficionado does and how they present themselves, and the way an alternative voice does. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we're going to see more and more and more of is, and this is what I was talking about the idea that quality of content wins out. People become familiar with not just the tone of voice, but the approach that people take to evaluating something. And they go, this guy thinks like I do. I like that. I don't want the guy that's telling me, I should have $100,000 watch and wear custom suits and, go on vacation and safari in Africa. I want the guy that I'm likely to bump into when I'm at the liquor store or at the cigar shop. And so that's a vibe that I think is very, very successful in reaching consumers. And I applaud it. I think it's fantastic. But remember, to maintain the level of honesty in that, so that you keep that relationship, in other words, that people continue to trust you, sometimes you have to be honest in a way that's harsh. And it means that when you walk into a booth at the trade show, the guy's going to go, oh, thanks a lot for shooting down our fucking biggest launch last year, or this spring. I remember that you said, it tastes like mud or whatever. In other words,
Minerality.
But yeah. But by the way, there's fucking nothing wrong with having mineral notes in a cigar. So fuck anybody that objects to that phrase. They're fucking idiots and they're barbarians and they screw them. They don't belong in this conversation anyway.
I resemble that statement.
It's good. That's great because that's what we're talking about. This is about the give and take. But the thing is that you have to express. You have to be willing to put your balls on the table sometimes and go, this is a fuck up, and then by the way, the way that you explain it is the reason why you can walk into that booth. You can say, listen, dude, here's what I experienced. Maybe I got the one bad cigar that you made, when you were planning all of this, but nonetheless, that's how it hit me. You got to be able to justify why you rendered a verdict which was less than favorable for something that somebody put a lot of time and effort into building. And being the lone voice in the woods sometimes is a tough job. In other words, you're looking around and going, I don't think that dog is that shaggy. Is not a popular viewpoint.
Yeah, and to that point, George, there's one review. I reviewed cigars for a brief time on Cigar Dojo, and if there's one regret that I have in all the reviews that I did, I've been haunted by it for a number of years, and I was haunted by it again this week. And that was the CAO Nicaragua. That cigar is not good.
It's a bad cigar. Why would you feel bad about it?
But I didn't give it a harsh enough review, and that's why it haunts me.
I remember. I told Coop that I thought it was discontinued after the party at the trade show, but apparently they still sold it for a few years.
I gave it an 87, and it's probably the highest rating that it ever got and probably ever deserved. And it's the review that haunts me to this day, George. Because
that's at least double what it.
It's not good. And
but that's great because it's out there. And by the way, you can amend that at any point that you want. You can have you should make a 5-minute addendum to the review that says, by the way, I recorded this, review after smoking the cigar. Don't even say under duress. We were at a party and I was liquored up, and but you just tell the story and say, these guys are my friends, and I wanted to like this cigar, but it's fucking garbage, and everybody has since exposed. The fucking emperor has no new clothes. So guess what? I'm in that group too. Don't pay any fucking attention to what I said before. I'm telling you the truth now.
Bear, the only problem I had with that, I remember that review. The only problem I had is you said you would smoke that cigar again, which that was the part that shocked me. The score didn't bother me, but you actually said you would smoke that cigar again.
And I made the mistake of doing that again, and I realized the mistake of it the first time.
Yeah.
Because
sometimes weird things can happen with the score. And I'm like, look, I'm not trying to pick. I'm sure I've written things like not dumb, but like dumber than that all this stuff, right?
I don't know, Coop. I don't know. It was pretty bad.
No, but look, we all at times, like I said, I don't know if the reason why I say I don't probably would ever I don't regret it is because sometimes I will re-review a cigar from time to time. So that's why
you should.
And that's why
you should revisit cigars.
Right.
You should revisit your wins.
Yeah.
You should revisit the cigars that you gave all the plaudits and the high scores to see if they're continuing to achieve that. Or if it was, they put these cigars out and I bought, I took them home to the trade show and I smoked them 3 months later and they were fantastic. And what they ship to stores has nothing whatsoever to do with it. We've all been through that before. So it's equally important to revisit your wins as well as your losses. I was just striving for the idea that sometimes, as reviewers, when you have a huge body of work, all of us are people that essentially we're evaluating cigars for a living, right? In other words, that's a key part of what we do. And in a sense, we get judged by that. And trust me, manufacturers know the same thing. They go, I sort of slipped one by there, that wasn't the cigar that it should have been. And you called it out, so you gain points from that, from being honest, as opposed to going, oh wow, they hit another home run. No, fuck that.
Yeah.
See, Bear, let me just look back to what I was saying back. The one thing I think that's really important is, look, people do remember the score, but I find that people remember whether you told them to go smoke the cigar or not even more. And I've kind of had that come back to me and I've gotten emails and stuff like that. So and I was telling the story the other night. There was a reviewer who was telling me he hated the Damaso, right? He was telling me this was not good, blah blah blah. And then I see the next day he gave it a 90, and I just was like, "What the heck?" So
when a 90 is not a 90, right?
There a 99, it's a true story. So I'm like, so
you write that guy a quick text message which says, "Do you still beat your wife? And if not, when did you stop?"
Right.
Just forget it. The guy he's incapable of telling the truth.
Yep.
I gotta be honest. I'm intrigued to try the CAO Nicaragua at this point. I want to know what.
You haven't smoked it? Oh, it's not good.
You're not missing anything, Mike. It's all right.
Well,
listen, the thing is, you'd have to find it first.
Yeah.
Before you try it, you'd have to find it.
Well, none of us would take any at the opening party. Like they were trying to give them away, right? And no one, like Jack Tarano tried to hand me a bag, and I'm like, no thanks. You save them for your retailers. I said.
Oh man, just keeps haunting me day in day out. So
seriously, with that cigar, you try leaving one out on the counter at a cigar store. When you come back, it's not gone. There's another one there.
Right, it's that kind of cigar.
All right,
we've seen it happen, all of us.
All right, let's move on here to the last couple of segments here. Last couple fun segments before we go into the last questions. For the evening. So this next segment is brought to you by Pastania Cigars. Everybody eats. If you always make sure that your servant's towel is bigger than your appetite, everybody will always get theirs. Pastania Cigars is more than just great cigars made by cool people. They embody an attitude of gratitude and grit. With Pastania, everybody eats. I wanted to bring this question to the panel. We've all had the opportunity to probably have some pretty epic meals over the years, thank courtesy to our good friends in the cigar industry, for one. But we were joking around earlier about Erron not liking seafood. But I wanted to ask the panel, what is a dish, a specific type of food or a dish that you would not have otherwise tried or had the opportunity to try if it weren't for your connection in the cigar industry?
This is a hard one because I will try any food.
Yeah, Tripp, you and I are the same there.
Eggs or octopus.
I mean, I've tried them and I hated them.
Yeah, that's fair. You did have octopus last time.
Man,
what's that goat stew?
I chewed that octopus for 15 minutes, man.
I think it was chewing on you at that point.
Thor actually just gave the answer I was going to give.
Hiva. Okay, yeah, I can't remember the name, but yeah.
Hiva. I mean, that's the one that came to mind. It's a goat. I never had it till I went to the Dominican Republic, and Jose told me to get it. So yeah, that was the one I had.
Well, what is it, Thor? What is
Hiva?
it exactly? Yeah,
goat.
Oh, it's just some kind of stew with chunks. Yeah, with goat.
It's like a goat stew. Yeah, it's like a goat. It's like a beef stew, but with goat. Yeah,
sounds right up my alley.
Oh, Tripp. Actually, I got one. What was that thing we had? The gas station ceviche that was next to the strip club.
Oh yeah, that giant pile of ceviche in Dominican Republic.
Had a gas station, no less, which was fantastic.
Yeah, that was real weird. And actually, on that trip, we also had the mofongo, which was the first time I'd ever had mofongo. And they were like, "You gotta try this." Man. And it was this like 8-inch tall mountain of mashed up plantains and fried rice, and it was amazing.
I had baby eel when I was in Cuba, which is not something I probably would have ordered for myself, but this was a cigar trip, and the guy at the table said, "It's in season. You have to try it because you may not get another opportunity in the near future to try it." And you know what? It was pretty good.
I still feel like that place is lying. Because the last time we were there, like, we're there for the eels. No, we got bread. We got rum. We have butter. You can have some butter. We have lots of butter.
That's right, because you were there for that.
No eel. Nothing else.
No eel.
Erron, anything
right.
over the years?
What's that?
I was asking Erron.
George, go ahead.
I'm sorry. It's a terrible story to tell, but in the '96 World Cup, uh, for a variety of reasons, I ended up assembling a group of guys who were pretty amazing, and we went to Paris to eat at Alain Ducasse's the chef's table the week of the World Cup final, which was when France won. Right. In other words, it was absolute mania, but we ended up at what was one of the greatest restaurants in the world at the time. And I had this great posse of guys assembled to go, and Ducasse was great. He was very generous. He bounced out the people who were going to be at the chef's table and put us in. The whole meal was crazy, but we were in the hands of a sommelier from the restaurant who every course that came, and so it was like, I don't know, maybe 12, maybe 13 courses that were served. But we were like 5, 6 courses in, and this guy kept bringing us a variety of white wine from Cancy, from this region in France. And I was like, what is happening here? Why are we being like pandered to somehow? And I spoke to a friend of mine who was with me that used to live in Paris, and he had this conversation with the sommelier when he came back in to describe what the sommelier was like. The chef is preparing X, and I have selected. And my friend Nico says, "Excuse me, let me ask you just one question. Is the next wine that you're planning on serving us going to be another white wine from Cancy, right?" And the guy goes, and he gives us this, and he goes, "Perhaps you'd like to have the wine list and choose the wines yourself." And he stalked out. He left us, right? We're at the chef's table. We don't have any idea what's coming or anything else. But and there's much more to the story, and all the things that happened afterwards were tremendous. But as a result of that, and I hated that this guy was doing that to us in this tasting, I fell in love with these wines. They were fucking spectacular. We hated his guts for how he was treating us and what was happening right there. But he totally turned us on to something that I had no idea, no clue about. It took a while to forgive him, but
that's awesome.
Spectacular.
Right.
That actually reminded me of an experience, not necessarily a meal, but an experience that I wouldn't have gotten to partake otherwise without the cigar business. I think, John, you were there, I believe. This was March of 2017 in Nicaragua. We were with Logan, and we were at Charlie's, the German restaurant in Granada.
Yep.
Drinking out of a boot of beer, watching Chocolatito fight for the title. Who, anyone not familiar, Chocolatito was the pride of Nicaragua. He had gone, I think, 46 wins in a row boxing super flyweight. He had just won the title a couple months earlier, and we were watching him
second
fight.
Coming of Alexis Arguello, the national hero for the whole country. He was definitely.
And we were in this German restaurant in Nicaragua. Logan was losing his mind. He was like having a panic attack. If Chocolatito loses this fight, they're going to go wild. The whole country is going to go crazy. And they're going to kill all the white people. And like, he was convinced that we were in real trouble being out in the boonies of Managua. Or Granada, rather.
Granada.
He's having a full-on panic attack.
He was freaking out, man. But I don't know. George's story just reminded me of how hilarious that night was to us. John and I were enjoying the night. Logan was not.
All right. Well, this next segment is brought to you by Asylum Cigars. Refuge is more than just a physical place. It can be a vague state of mind. Some of life's greatest reflections can be found in our own personal asylum. Moments like these were made for Asylum Cigars, so light up an asylum and choose your refuge. I know a couple of people missed out on that segment specifically, but I wanted to get everybody's opinion here. Now, Erron kicked off the show with the cigar that he was smoking that he started the show with saying that it was the best cigar that he's ever smoked. So I wanted also all of us to kind of take a moment to reflect on maybe not the best cigar that we've ever smoked, but that a cigar that made us pause, that kind of kicked us right in the teeth in the best possible way. And it was a defining moment in our cigar consumption careers. So Erron, is that cigar the moment for you, or is there something else?
It's just that the best cigar I ever smoked, so that kind of had that kind of effect there. But I'll tell you another experience that I had is that I went to Florida for a kind of every other year baseball trip I take for spring training. But I stopped into the Espinosa offices and got to hang out with Eric's son, Hector, Casey Hogan from Crux, and some of the other guys that were there at the office. And Hector handed me an unbanded cigar, and he kind of told me a little bit about it, but I was, talking to everybody in the room and stuff like that. So I lit it up and I was smoking it, and then it just hit me that, that I'm smoking something that's really, really good. And I didn't really know what I was smoking because it was hard for me to focus on what he was telling me. So I stopped the conversation that was going on in the room so that I could ask Hector what it was so that he could explain to me so I knew what I was smoking. And so he told me it was a Connecticut wrap cigar, which I could tell from the flavor and the look of it. But it was the Protocol Themis that he was working on for Protocol Cigars. And it was just a moment where like there was something else going on, but I had to stop what was going on because there was a cigar happening at that time that I needed to know about because I was experiencing a taste that kind of overshadowed the conversation and stuff like that. So that's another cigar that kind of popped in for that kind of a experience.
Dennis, what about you?
Can't think of the name. So this was back in 2012, when I was just kind of exploring cigars and not knowing what anything was, I was just buying stuff from catalogs, thinking I'm going to try this. That looks cool. It sounds fun. Just really buying with my eyes. And there was a cigar, man, Gran Habano something. I can't remember exactly what it was. I never figured it out. And that, for whatever reason, that was the moment when I thought cigars were interesting. And I smoked whatever that cigar was. And from that point on, it changed my entire perspective on what I liked. And I started to understand cigars at a very different level. It was a very much like a growing up phase in that moment for me. And I started getting into right now, like that's where we are today now for me. And I still don't know what it is. I've been thinking about it for years. Every, like once a year it comes up, I think about it. It's crazy. I'll never find it again, probably.
Dr. George,
would you know it if you saw it?
No.
Okay.
No. Mike, you kind of, as you kind of illustrated last week when you were a guest on the show, you kind of found your way into the cigar industry by happenstance, coincidence, accident, however you want to qualify it. But what about you? What was one of those moments where it just made you stop?
I mean, one of the biggest surprising moments for me was the Padron Millennium for sure. It was given to me by a great guy named Eckert. I was smoking it. He gave it to me for the birth of my kid. And like when I sat down smoking, I was like, God damn, this is amazing. But like I've said that a couple times at this point. I mean, another one that was really kind of a major pivotal point for me was when I first blended my first cigar with Skip at Nica Sueño, which is the Postania Habano. Because like I could have easily, I mean, the first one I made, was terrible. I totally fucked it up, but it still tasted good. And shortly thereafter, I had blended something that I thought was remarkable. And that's just because of the fact that I was working with good tobacco, and a guy that I could trust. So that was a really big moment for me. I was like, holy shit, I think I got a banger here. And, to this day, I still feel that way. And I still love that cigar. And, I would say that was the one moment that really kind of stopped me in my tracks. Like, all right, this is pretty dope. It wasn't just like, hey, make a cigar, learning it and having that ability to work with somebody that I could trust was everything.
Awesome. Thor, what about you?
Well, I would say it was probably a cigar that one of my friend's dads gave me. We were, still growing up, just getting into cigars. We were just trying to get our hands on anything we could. Phillies, Swisher, it didn't
I remember
matter.
those days.
Oh yeah, and he used to have this apple bin, and he had like made it into an ashtray, and so he'd always throw his cigar butts in there, and so we'd always take those. And so our first impressions of cigars weren't the greatest, and so he got tired of us stealing all his cigar butts, and so he gave us each a cigar, and it was a Baza, I think made for Mike's or something, but it was made by Fuente. And I remember lighting that up, and it was sweet, and the smell of it finally kind of clicked. Maybe because it was the first cigar, really a good cigar that I didn't smoke out of an ashtray that someone already smoked, but that really kind of clicked it for me. And it's funny because to this day I still love Fuente. And that was the first Fuente made cigar that really got me into it, and I still love their products to this day. So,
some Tripp.
I mean, I told a little bit of the story at the beginning, the Don Pepin Blue. So I lived in Connecticut as a kid, and I got into cigars. I was kind of like Dennis said, like I would order some stuff off of catalogs. I was on some cigar forums with a bunch of people, and we kind of started having these meetups in Manhattan. So I'd take the train into Manhattan. We'd meet up at a cigar shop, spend a couple hours there, and then hit a bar and go home. One of those times, I think it was Davidoff Madison that we went to. It might have been Columbus Circle. But we were at one of the Davidoff shops, and I saw Don Pepin Blue. It was the old packaging that if most people saw a picture, they probably wouldn't even recognize it. It was like a purple band with this bright, shiny gold wording. And I grabbed that cigar and sat in the shop and lit it, and was like, that was the moment where I was like, holy shit. This is like it, I mean, it was life changing. Like suddenly cigars had this entire new depth to them that I had never thought about before. Like before that, it was a hobby that I was interested in. And then I tasted that cigar and it was like, man, it's got this sweetness. It's got this meatiness. It's got these flavors that I've never tasted before. And that was the one that hooked me.
John?
The easy answer was I was going to light up the same cigar, coincidentally, that Erron lit up tonight, the L'Exception 2011. I think the longer answer is I had been down on Cigar Safari, I don't know how many times, and each iteration I was kind of working on my quote unquote blend, just fumbling my way through tobacco. And I think it was either my fourth or fifth time. And Willie was there, and I had all my previous blending sheets, and Willie's like kind of looking at me like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I've been messing around with this, what I'm trying to build. And so the conversation changed from, wrapper, binder, filler to like, what is it you're trying to do? And so we spent about 15, 20 minutes, and he kind of looked through my blending sheets, and he's like, okay. He's like, so where are you at with the fourth iteration? And I'm like, okay, well, this is the tweaks I've made. And he kind of looked at it, and within, it couldn't have been more than 15 seconds. He's like, oh yeah, no. So here's the issue. You've got, this tobacco is wrong, and this tobacco is wrong. So just swap those out for this, and I think you've got it. And he did it in like 15, 20 seconds, and I'd been working on this for, like no joke, like I'd been planning it and writing it down. And he just took 20 seconds. He's like, oh yeah, no, this is what the issue is. Just swap these out, and you're set. And I think at that point it was pretty much nailed down, but it was just kind of funny to see, here's a guy with decades worth of tobacco experience, and in a short conversation, he just nails it from his tobacco knowledge. And meanwhile, I was fumbling through, but that was kind of a great moment to be experienced with someone who really knew tobacco to sort of guide me through that process. And that was kind of one of the cool defining moments for me for cigars, just to see a guy who really knew what he was talking about have that conversation.
All right. George?
First of all, Thor, we'll have a conversation about Balsa one day. I'll tell you a story about why Mike's had it in the first place, and we'll talk about a variety of these other selections. But I will tell you this: the cigar that sort of did the same thing opened up like, oh, they can be much more than just these things that we smoke. You know, what you've been fooling with. In 1974, 75, what was then called Consolidated was developing brand extensions for the H. Upmann. And they released a cigar called the H. Upmann Ametista. Do you guys know what an Ametista is? What an Ametista jar is?
No.
No clue.
It's a Ametista is and Upmann. They built this at the Menendez and Garcia factory. They're the ones who started it. It's a glass jar that has a cedar lining, and in the old days, naturally everything gets cut down. Fucking Cuba sells them in 25 counts now if they make them, but it was a 50 count, so you were getting a half wheel of cigars in this beautiful jar that had a lid that had a like a button at the top and a little tiny humidification, one of those metal things with Flores
Sponge
chalk inside.
yeah.
It would be, now it wasn't a sponge, but Flores chalk, but that was in there. It was like, oh well, we're keeping this going, and these metal clamps that went down. An Ametista jar is a legendary. It's one of the innovations in cigar packaging that sort of blew everybody's minds. So when from Cuba, I'm talking about, so 70, 80 years ago. But when Consolidated brought it back under the guidance of the great Benjamin Menendez, one of the greatest cigar men in all of our lifetimes, and maybe one of the greatest cigar men that will ever live. He's the last link to Cuban greatness in the 30s and 40s. These cigars, so it was the jar, and there were 50 cigars inside, and the center cigar in the ring was wrapped in tissue paper with a little pigtail at the top. So you could reach in. If you tried to fuck with any of the other cigars, you would end up damaging some of them. But if you just reached in and pulled out the one that was in tissue paper first, everything else had flex. I got that jar at Georgetown Tobacco, and I opened it up and smelled the cigars, and I said, oh my God. And I pulled out the cigar in tissue and unwrapped it, and it had the most beautiful. George Burns wrote this to me once in a letter. He said, the cigar was so pretty, I didn't know whether I wanted to sleep with it or smoke it. This cigar was so gorgeous. I was like, I was thunderstruck by looking at this wrapper, which, by the way, was glorious Cameroon wrapper, just like the cigar that I'm smoking right now. I lit that thing up. I mean, literally, I stopped everything. I was actually receiving, and it was a shipment, and inventory came in, and this big box was there, and I opened it up, and there's the jar, and I pulled it out, and I'm like, this is the coolest cigar packaging I've ever seen, period, paragraph. But then I pulled out the cigar, and as soon as I saw it, I was like, I have to smoke this, and I lit it up. Dude, you want to talk about a life-changing moment. The flavor that was in that cigar was like, I just, it's like, oh shit, how am I supposed to sell all this other crap we have? Because this is the greatest cigar I've ever had in my life. And it unlocked all these things about, what a cigar is, how they're made, what the components are, how they can affect your reactions to them, and excellence. In other words, this paradigmatic shift. It was like, oh, okay, this is what great is, and everything else is fucking mediocre. It's like, this shit sucks by comparison. And by the way, that's a terrible thing to have, because those cigars were ridiculously expensive. They were like $1.15. right? You know, it was like the most
Crazy,
outrageous
crazy.
price. You know, it's like people are like $1.15. Are you out of your mind? You know, does it get up and sing a song? It's like just fucking light the cigar and smoke it. And people would be like, "Can I have the whole jar?" It's like, "No, I only got two. I have to sell them. You can buy five." You know, I mean, it was insane.
Similar to this, George?
Exactly. See what happens? It's a fucking 25 count jar now.
Yeah.
They have the nerve, you know. And by the way, it's also a different size. The original Amatista was essentially a Corona Gorda. In other words, it was the 5 5/8 by a 47 ring gauge, which by the way was a big cigar then. Not, you know, but that's like the Amatista jar that you buy now. Good on you, John. You know, I like the way. Show us that you're in Canada and that you have access to have. But here's my only question for you: how old is that jar?
Oh boy.
Have you had it more than 10 years?
Yeah, no, I think that's the 2009s. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You should. As great as they might be, don't smoke them in a hurry because they can't make anything like that these days.
Very true.
100%.
Anyway, sorry guys, but it was you know, and believe me, I've had multiple other instances where I bumped into a cigar that said, "Oh my God, there's so much more to this than I understood," and it set the hook. It's like, okay, so now I have to know more. I have to know more about these. Why are they this way? And what else is like this? And how do I learn? You know. And by the way, don't forget, at that time in the business, everybody was about pipes and pipe tobacco and all the accessories that are around it. You know, the coolest thing that would come out at the trade show was a pipe lighter. Nobody gave a shit about cigars because there wasn't any margin in it. So, you know, a successful tobacco shop made like maybe 30% of their sales from cigars. But I was like, I'm all in. This is it. I'm completely hooked.
Coop, I believe you're the last one, sir.
Yeah, I think you know part of this story, Bear. It was the CAO Brasilia, and which well, hear me out, George, before you.
No. I love it. I'm glad that you said that.
Okay. Here's the funny part. I'm not a big Brazilian tobacco fan in general, right? But that cigar, when I was smoking originally, the first couple years I was smoking originally, I was just smoking cigars in the whole pure enjoyment and pure pleasure. I used to smoke in a place called Florio's in New York, and I'd get their house cigar. Occasionally, I'd try a different brand, but it wasn't really a thing. But when I smoked CAO Brazilian, I'm not saying it was the greatest cigar I ever had. For the first time, I started thinking about other things with cigars, that cigars are, you know, around cigars, country of origin, types of tobacco. Do I dare use the words wrapper, binder, fill, which I know I try to get away from today. So it really did, that cigar, just the way it was branded and the fact that it had sister brands like the Italia, the America, it changed my whole perception and journey to a point where I started wanting to accumulate a lot of different knowledge. It led me to go to my first trade show as a buyer before media. So it was all those things, but I think Brasilia, if it had not come along, I don't know where my journey would have been.
All right.
You know, Bear, the reason why CAO Brasilia could come into existence was because of a guy who actually worked for Danneman in Brazil. He sort of reinvented how they processed tobacco and then how they sold it. His nickname was Bear.
Good name. There you go.
He was an awesome guy. He was absolutely like the most
we often are
unbelievably disciplined. So, you know, you got a good brethren that led the way there.
Yes.
Bear, did you say yours?
No,
I didn't. I love telling this story because I think it's hilarious, and it's not like some iconic cigar like a Padron 50th or anything like that. But for me, it really was the turning point in terms of, in a very simplistic way, maybe focus on the tobacco and really kind of changed it. I was starting to smoke more cigars than I ever had before. I was even working retail at Pop Safari, thanks to the late great Barry Tong here in Fort Worth, Texas. And but I was visiting my future employer, Michael's Tobacco at the time, and who would become my general manager, Tracy Spence, hands me this cigar that looks absolutely like dog shit, and he says, "Smoke this." And he's like, "Wait." He pulls it back. He's like, "Have you eaten yet?" And I said, "Yeah, I had breakfast." He's like, "Great, cool, smoke this." And at the time, we still had some outdoor seating, so I went outside and I lit it up, and and I remember smoking. I was like, he's like, "It's really strong, so just FYI." And I said, "Okay, cool." So I was smoking it. I was enjoying it really. And a couple of the guys I was hanging out with, and one of the guys I was hanging out with said, "Hey, did you bring that thing you said you'd get it for me?" And I said, "Yeah, let me get it. It's in my car." And I took one step to get out of my seat, and I sat back down. I said, "Nope, that's gonna have to wait for you." And that cigar was what was a Michael's Tobacco exclusive at the time, but later got mass released by La Flor Dominicana, known as the NAS. So nasty ass shit, straight cheroot, yeah, all straight Ligero. I mean, just an ugly ass looking at cigar. But the reason it gave me perspective was, and it was interesting to John's point a minute ago about seeking other avenues and opinions. I remember going to Charlie's review of that cigar, which he was not kind to it at all. But I remember smoking the rest of that cigar and really kind of taking in the tobaccos that I was smoking and comparing it to stuff that I had smoked before, even from the Florida Dominicana or either other brands, to try to see what, in a very simplistic way, what Lito was trying to do with it. And again, I think he was just having fun with it and everything, but it was really kind of eye-opening that a cigar so ugly and so simplistic in nature could really capture my attention in a very real way, and it really gave me an avenue into studying of tobacco. So,
was it still in that little cheroot size?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was even unlabeled too at the time. So it was just a nasty looking cheroot, man. Not much to it.
I thought for sure you were going to say CAO Nicaragua.
Still haunts me
that
to this
couldn't
day,
knock
Mike.
anybody on its ass.
No.
It was life changing for many of us. So let's just say that.
I wish that CAO Nicaragua had knocked me out. Maybe I wouldn't remember it so much. And fortunately, I do. So, but last couple questions for the night, guys. I want to kind of skip to the bottom of the page on topic number 3, because I posed this question to Erron Loomis a couple of years ago at the trade show, and by and large, I have I'm so grateful for this collection of gentlemen and all these cigar media outlets and platforms that we all call home. And George, for his infinite knowledge and experience that he's had in the industry, both in media and otherwise. But here's the question of the day: is everybody in this room colleagues or competition?
I'll jump at it and say absolutely colleagues. I think the rising tide raises all ships, and I mean, we're all in it together. I know that we have a lot of crossover audience, and then I mean, we also have people who watch one of our shows but not the rest, and I think that's totally fine. And I think that we're all just out here to get more people interested in cigars, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. I think he might have said what a lot of us were thinking, which is one of the things that makes the cigar business different and so great for those of us who have fallen in love with it. It's collegial in a way that many industries aren't. It's not cutthroat by its very nature, particularly when it comes to the aspects of evaluating, of being a commentator on what's happening in the industry. I would say that absolutely. I would hope that all of us look at each other as colleagues, but at the same time, what is important for all of us, and the way you've guided us through this, Bear, has revealed different points of view and things like that. we are competitors in one sense, in that we're all striving for eyeballs. We're all striving for time from the ultimate consumer, the person who spends their money and keeps us all working, right? And keeps us all engaged. So from the sense of being competitors, what's important is that we recognize, game should recognize game. Like, why Coop is great. The things that Erron and John do, that are so sharp. What Thor has done, how he made Cigar Press into a different entity. These are things. Competition is the best thing that can happen to any business. And when you show me that there's a better way, or that you have some insight that I don't, it just makes me want to catch up. So we should. While all of us, look, I look forward to seeing all you guys, the next time that happens, whether it's the trade show or some other excuse that happens before then. And I regard everybody in that same way. We should be thinking about the competitive aspects of what we do, because it sharpens us. It makes our game better. It's wrong to think, oh, well, we're all just friends in this, and so it doesn't matter. You do what you do, and I'll do what I do. No, I look at what everybody is doing in the business now, and I see who does certain things right, and that's those are the things that you want to latch onto. Those are the things that you want to share. Those are the things you want to point up. So, I mean, I hope we're all friends. And that we absolutely, first and foremost, regard ourselves as colleagues, but you should never forget that we're competitors, and that, whatever I do that's better, or whatever you do, Bear, that's better, I should learn from.
That's right. Mike, what about you?
Man, I'm just kind of flattered to be in a topic of conversation about a colleague. That's kind of a big one, to be honest. I think, a lot of you guys on this platform right now, I just consider friends. So, it's kind of where it is for me, I don't really analyze you guys. I just enjoy our conversations and our camaraderie at the end of the day. So, that's all I can really say. Thanks for considering me a colleague, I guess,
Erron, John?
Yeah, I definitely think we're all colleagues. Most of us on here chat probably on a pretty frequent basis. When we're at trade shows, we're chatting with each other. It's always funny, like when we end up running into each other at a booth, and whoever's booth we're in, sometimes will come up and say, "You guys don't hate each other?" That we're all the time. It's almost like an anchor man when all the different news stations meet up for the fight, right? So like we're all going to show up, make it to the middle of the trade show floor, and we're going to have a battle to the death or something. But look, Coop and we partner up on the primetime show, but we're completely different entities, right? So we work together. We also do some of the same things. So it's not a competition at that point, right? We're working together, and Coop's given me tons of advice on stuff, and I've worked with him on some things, and we'll run into people and talk about certain cigars, or somebody at the trade show may have tried a cigar and say, "Hey, you got to go see this booth, and you guys got to talk to these guys, or you got to try this cigar," things like that. So there are definitely people in the media that I don't care for, but I'm not going to say that they're competition. I just don't like them or don't like what they do, something like that. So, but yeah, I don't see it as competition. I think we're all working together, and maybe sharing advice on things, and sharing information or what we should be checking out and things like that. So, I don't really see it. I understand George's point. Yes, we're all competing for views and stuff like that, but not in the same way that you need, you're really Coke versus Pepsi kind of a thing, where you're really searching for stealing
That's a good way to put it.
Other people's, people's money.
More often than not, when we're at the show, I'm like, "What are you guys doing? What are we up to?" I don't want to go hang out with other people. We're hanging with you guys.
That's right.
Yeah, 100%. Iron sharpens iron, and I, as a producer of content, I'm also a huge consumer of content. I'm the number one fan right now for a Cigar Hustler podcast, because You know, I consume that on the regular. I consume magazine content. I consume podcasts that are way outside of my scope because I'm constantly looking to get different takes on manufacturers, different takes on the industry. And as a part of that, you know, I'm always doing self-analysis of, you know, is there something I can be doing better? So to me, absolutely, it's colleagues, and I'm always looking for my peers and my peers' take on whether it's reviews or articles or whatever, ways that I can be better, for sure.
You know, Thor, with
How not to review CAO Nicaragua.
Yeah, exactly. So, Thor, with the exception of George, you know, all of us kind of came into the space, you know, after you did. You know, what's your, you know, and you've, you know, as we mentioned before, you have some fantastic relationships within the industry and everything. How do you view, you know, the cigar aficionados, the cigar coops, and everything like that? Is it competition or is it colleague?
I mean, on the business sense, yeah, it's, you know, competition, but it's too small of an industry. You know, I mean, you all work together, play off of each other. So, I mean, being colleagues is definitely more important, I think, in the broader scheme of things. You know, just like I said, the industry's small. And so, you know, when we work together, I think we can achieve more.
I was really hoping for like a Kendrick Lamar approach from Thor. Like, man, I fucking do all you guys. Just, you know, but I figured.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, Coop,
I'm not dropping the hammer tonight.
Yeah, you know what?
Nice take. So, Coop, you've done probably just as much as anybody on this panel, and then some, as being a real ambassador for the approach to cigar media. You know, you certainly helped me in my you know, career in this. You've partnered with Erron, as Erron articulated earlier. You know, you brought over Cigar Dave, excuse me, Dave Burke from, sorry. That would be quite a buoy to
He's the relevant Cigar Dave.
Cigar Dave. Yeah. So Dave Burke, you know, you've connected a lot of dots, and you've brought a lot of people in. You've worked with like Matt over at Smoking Tobacco and everybody, you know, Dojo and the like. And I would say that you're probably one of the more respected, if not the most respected person on this panel in terms of that kind of relationship that you've built. So I'm interested to hear your perspective on this.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of the answers that was said. What Thor said is very accurate. What George says is very accurate. Erron, I mean, Mike, I agree with all that. You know, I do have to look at this sometimes from a business, although everyone here is really a friend, and you know, a lot of the guys actually are on the Coop team as well. So, and the ones who aren't, you know, like I said, I consider them friends, not necessarily competition, but there is competition out there for me. I mean, that's what I got to make very clear. There are people that are competitors. It doesn't mean necessarily I have a bad relationship, and I'll give two examples. When we first had Charlie Minato on primetime, this is 2017, people thought it was going to be like this battle royal of like us just killing Charlie, right? It was the opposite. It was a very, very good conversation. It was a conversation of respect. And I think people were actually disappointed that we weren't like throwing barbs at each other, right? But we've had Charlie, and anytime I've asked Charlie or any of the Half-Full guys to come on, they've never put a restriction or anything like that. You know, they've never said, don't talk about this, don't talk about that. And I've respected that. Now, the second one is, and I've had maybe a little more of a frosty relationship with these guys, but, you know, I think you guys know the story, how I've gotten to know Greg Matola from Cigar Aficionado over the past couple of years, right? And we don't really get into shop talk, but there's been a mutual respect. We see each other at the festivals. We recently saw each other at Carlito's birthday, and we'll chat, and, you know, I think we enjoy chatting with each other. So it doesn't have to be like that, but that one is a little more competition, but at the same time, there's no reason why we can't have a cordial relationship and stay in our lanes. So that's how I look at it.
I for one was in the camp of disappointment of the interview. I was expecting sparks to fly. So, but no, it was a nice surprise. It was a nice surprise, and it ended up being.
And it was Erron who came up with the idea to do it too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Erron, to that point, I want to credit you for a number of things. You've been really willing to, in both on developing palettes and then in your partnership with Coop. You know, the interview with Charlie is one example, and there's been a couple of others over the years where you haven't shied away from controversial figures. You haven't shied away from controversy in a lot of ways, where you could have seen those competitive, sparks fly, so to speak. And they haven't. So kind of what is that the colleague approach that we were talking about? Is that kind of play into it? I know that you said that there's people you don't like, but I mean, you haven't really let that get in the way of these constructive conversations.
Yeah, I mean, my viewpoint is if you are covering the industry, you need to cover the industry, right? You can't say no to covering something because you have necessarily a personal ideology against somebody or something, because it's still part of the industry, right? And if you're not covering it, then you're not really covering the industry as a whole. And I feel like if you're trying to be truthful to yourself and to your audience, you still have to cover that. But in that same vein, you have to ask those questions that leads you to have some of those thoughts and things like that. So if you're willing to ask the tough questions or getting into the tough conversations, I think that's good for you, and it's good for the audience. It's good for the guest, because like if Coop and I had somebody on the show and they said we can't talk about this, not necessarily like a cigar release, because I understand that, if they're going to announce it on their own time, that's fine. But if there's a topic of conversation that's out there kind of in the public about a brand or a person or something like that, if they say that they can't talk about it, I'm not interested in being a part of the show. So either Coop can do the show by himself if he wants to still go down that route, but we haven't run into that yet. Or it's just that we're just not going to have them on the show because it's not the right time. If they can't talk about it, it's not the right time to have them on the show.
Right.
So that's kind of my vision in it.
Yeah, and Erron and I don't think we've ever had a disagreement too much on it. I think a couple of times we asked the question knowing that we weren't going to get an answer, but we asked the question, right? But that's absolutely been the case. If we will not, if we can't ask those questions, then I'm not interested either. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I for one, I've always appreciated Erron's perspective and opinion, because I pride myself in asking tough questions, and then there's questions that I miss, and Erron's, I would say, kind of funny, but I would say Erron's very quick to point it out, but it's very constructive in nature, and it's something that I appreciate. I'm like, yeah, man, I missed that. I totally missed that, and that's again, that only makes me better. And so,
I kind of look at it like if I'm listening to a show and like I will talk to the show as if I was part of the panel of the show, right? So I'm like, man, I want to know this. Like if I was doing the show, I'd want to know this, and I'll, like you said, Bear, I'm bringing it up. I'm not trying to like nitpick you for missing it or anything like that. Just like, throw that in your back pocket so that next time you talk to them, maybe you ask that question, or, now you think about this kind of a path, and then, another guest that you have on, you kind of go around that route to kind of get that info. But yeah, my goal is definitely not to like point out flaws in something. It's just really like, I'm listening to the show and there's something I want to know, or a topic comes up and it just adds another question that would kind of just pop into my head to ask. So kind of throw that out there to kind of feed your piggy bank.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate it. So this brings us to our last question of the evening, gentlemen. It's been a long evening. Thank you so much for hanging in there late with us. And we'll wrap up the show as we always do here on ELOSOFUMARTAKES with our Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust curveball segment. Fastballs or curveballs, it doesn't matter. Since the company's inception, Steve Saka has been knocking them out of the park. Count them up, everybody. 9 consecutive years in the consensus top 3. Congratulations to our good friend, Mr. Steve Saka. So this organization has come up quite a bit tonight. We've talked a lot about Cigar Aficionado and its place in history when it comes in terms of cigar media. But what we've also talked about, even in our own little purviews, in our own little corners of this universe, is how we've evolved and adapted and changed, or even gave birth to certain aspects in this space. So my question is this: what is the over-under on the number of years that Cigar Aficionado will still look the same as it does today?
I'm going last.
Okay. And here's something to consider too as you're answering. how will it look different, or how will it look the same, and will that be a positive or negative on its future?
So, Bear, I'm not sure what you mean by change, but let me just give you an example of something. Like when Cigar Aficionado stopped, like they used to use Cigar Insider to give the exclusive news. They changed that because it was very antiquated. Are you talking about a change like that, or
yeah? Will
something
we
else?
see a Cigar Aficionado podcast hosted by Greg Matola, Dave Savona, Marvin Shankin? Will we see just the complete elimination of the print magazine? Again, print is, while it's still very powerful, as George mentioned, that the heyday of magazines was the 90s. That's coming up on 30 years old. I don't want to put Thor out to pasture with his, but I want to know how Cigar Aficionado, will it look different, and the over number of years that it will change.
I'm taking the under on 8 years. That the print magazine will no longer exist. It'll be digital only.
Okay. Why do you think?
First of all, I think I'm being a little aggressive. I think that maybe 12 years is probably the better guess, but I'm going to go with 8. I think that subscriptions are going down, and the amount of people who buy the print magazine is going down. I think that it'll be a much longer time before Cigar Aficionado is forgotten and gone. I mean, I think they'll transition at some point over the next 8 or 10 years to a digital format, and they will still be as, like John mentioned earlier, as powerful on the retail side as they always have been. But I think print is slowly but surely going away at this, as far as they're concerned, at least. I know a lot of people, until they got rid of it, subscribed to the digital one on Amazon. I know I did. But
okay.
We'll see how the future turns out. Right?
Thor, I think you have a unique perspective on this because, I mean, have you considered changes to Cigar Press and its evolution? And do you think that Cigar Aficionado will follow suit, or what are?
Well, I mean, we've started now. We're just going to do an annual edition, one time a year, and do more reviews and things like that online. But I just feel that's, at least for me, being a smaller niche publication, that's kind of just the natural way to go. I mean, people are tightening up their advertising dollars. So, but I don't know. As far as Aficionado, they're going strong, and as long as people are buying those ads, I don't see them getting rid of print anytime soon. But I definitely think they're going to have a stronger presence online. I mean, how could you not evolve? It's kind of just the way of the times. So, yeah, but I don't see them slowing down anytime soon.
John, Aaron, any thoughts?
I think I'd put the over-under on probably 10 or 12 years. I think that, I think the changing landscape, and I think the most recent generations have changed dramatically in the way they consume content. I think we've seen that a lot with the rise of stuff like TikTok and Instagram, that sort of up-and-coming consumer, when they kind of start to take over the industry, and that's going to take a while, I think you're going to naturally have a transition from, as Tripp said, I don't think print's going away, but I think you're going to have to supplement that content with a more rich and detailed digital content. I don't think they're going to be doing podcasts anytime soon, but I think the digital space is going to have to be expanded to continue to capture an audience that is moving away from print, and that's just a generational thing. I think that it's pretty clear that generation of up and coming cigar smoker, I don't believe is we've seen it in the book space. I mean, they're almost entirely consuming books in a digital format, which blows my mind. So I think that it's a much longer time frame, but I think they're going to have to adapt, and I think they will adapt. But I think it's probably closer to a time scale of, I'd say, 10 or 12 years that happens.
So, Coop, in 10 years, who's doing more Instagram stories, Cigar Coop or Cigar Aficionado?
Wow. I hope they're not using stories, because this is the worst feature ever created in the history of social media, right? And
there it is.
Right? Because in my opinion, transient content is useless, right? I always say we need to have persistent content. But here's the thing. Okay, but here's the thing. I'm gonna put it a little more under, because I think the big change that they can do, well, maybe not. They're doing short content already. I'm looking at this. I just went on their YouTube page and they have under 1 minute content with some of their
Yeah,
cigars of the
they've
week.
been doing that for a while.
So forget that. I'm with John. I think it's 10 to 12 years. I don't see them going into podcasting. They've got enough of a presence on the video piece. The print piece is not going anywhere. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. They may beef up a couple of things on digital, but I don't see a major change. And like I said, the biggest change I saw in the last 10 years by them was the way they changed Cigar Insider. Which, like I said, and I think that's a direct result of the competition they've gotten on the news site, where, they had to retool what they were using that for. So I'm gonna go with the 12 years here under.
Mike, I'm interested to get your perspective because you also have a retail segment too, and I know that a lot of your patrons also consume, magazines as well. So,
Yeah, personally, I don't see the magazine. I think that it's going to continue doing what it's doing. What I have seen that recently that I find kind of fascinating, and I could be wrong. They could be doing this the whole time, but I'm seeing more consumer engagement articles where consumers that I'm aware of will go out of their way and tell me about the fact that they're on a piece, and I think that they're trying to cultivate that like bond with the consumers on that level, right? Consumers that are unique in some fashion, or they do something that's very different, whether they're extremely old and still smoking cigars, or they've, I know, big cigar guys that have houses that are cigar houses, next to their houses, stuff like that. So, and when you hear about these stories or people tell you about, hey, go check out this Cigar Aficionado because I'm in it. I think that that's a route that they're trying to look to tackle, so to continue their consumers and start to regrow that to some degree. And then I could see them dabbling in some of the social media platforms to try and drive more consumers to the magazine, but I don't think the magazine in itself is going anywhere.
Anyone else before I hand the baton back to George?
Yeah, I'll go real quick. I don't think the magazine goes anywhere anytime soon because I think that's their real stranglehold on viewership. The people in the stores that will pick up the magazine, I think if that goes away for them, that they will then struggle with maintaining kind of the hold they have, because the digital, everybody else that's doing digital, I think is kind of much further ahead than them. So it'll be hard for them, I think, to regain traction on that side. So I don't know timeline what that looks like, but things could change. I mean, I think a lot of it may depend on Marvin's involvement and what that looks like and when that ends, because then there may be changes after that. I don't know if he's got ideas on how to, like George mentioned, I mean, doing the CATV thing kind of was his choice to not make it happen. So he may be a roadblock at this point for more digital stuff.
I have a thought about not so much the format, but I think the content's going to change because the meaning of luxury has changed in the last 30 years. Luxury today is very different because you have a larger demographic of smoker now consuming cigars and content, and I suspect in some way the content's going to start to shift a little bit in that direction as more people are getting their hands on cigars and smoking them. So it won't be like the old guys smoking expensive cigars, driving Bentleys or whatever else. It'll be closer to guys like us that are going out and buying a couple boxes here and there and smoking and nerding out on it, that come from all kinds of different walks of life.
George, the floor is yours.
Okay. First of all, 8, 10, and 12 years is an eternity in the way that the world changes now. It is so hard to think 8 or 10 years into the future that predicting, like what something is going to be or how it's going to look is almost a fool's errand. What I would say is this. I think Cigar Aficionado is going to undergo a change sometime in the next 5 years, which is going to be basically a transition in terms of who's the authority for how it looks and how it feels. What I don't think Cigar Aficionado should ever lose is the physical feel. I can see them dropping frequency, and Thor, your idea of producing an annual is a great step in that direction. They will continue to find ways to be present in this space that they maybe gave birth to accidentally, but where they all of a sudden realize that they have serious competitors, and there's no question that they are way behind in terms of owning that audience. Cigar Aficionado is a physical property, and I think that what will succeed for them is transitioning from just having the physical magazine arrive. Like, one of the reasons somebody said their subscriptions are falling and the newsstand sales aren't the same. There's no newsstands anymore. There's no place to buy a magazine anymore. And cigar stores, it's shocking how many cigar stores actually don't sell Cigar Aficionado. They subscribe to it, so there's a copy in the lounge or whatever, but they don't sell it. So what I think that we could see is an era where there is a version of Cigar Aficionado which is available to people who want to see and hold a physical product. Like there's still people that want to buy books. However fast the industry wants to get away from having to pay for paper and binding and ink. There's something about the feel of the magazine which is inherently sexy is the wrong word for it, but engaging. I think that Cigar Aficionado's mission is to transition into providing more experiences in more places for people so that they can engage directly with the world that Cigar Aficionado has opened up to so many people. And they can do that very, very successfully. In other words, they can become more of an experience product than a physical, it arrives in your mailbox and you read it. And I believe that there is the desire to transition into something like that. There are a number of things that might be limiting it from becoming a reality. But I think that the success of all of the products that are on offer from the people who constitute this panel indicates that customers are really, really engaged. They want the physical, they want the interaction, they want the social aspect of it. And somebody that has as much weight and as much presence and as much history in the industry as Cigar Aficionado can move into a space. I mean, honestly, I think there should have been Cigar Aficionado clubs a long time ago. The top 10 or 12 markets in the country should have a Cigar Aficionado lounge. The problem is that when you do something like that, inherently it feels as if now all of a sudden you're becoming a competitor with part of your audience. I don't think that's really true, but that's the thinking that limits people from making moves like that. So I think that there is transition ahead for them. I don't think it's going to take as long as 8 years for us to see an evolution in the magazine, but let's be clear. Every single person that is here tonight is also going to be evolving and changing, and their game is going to be different. How they reach consumers, how they keep track of them, how they enhance their engagement with them is going to grow. So I don't think that Cigar Aficionado is not as much of a dinosaur as we want to think. There are people in the M. Shankin Communications who are thinking down the road about the steps that they need to take to continue that relationship with their audience. The thing is that whoever said earlier tonight that they're way behind in terms of digital engagement is absolutely right, but they have the capacity to catch up. And it will be as they see their base product erode for a variety of reasons that are essentially outside their control. They will embrace other ways to stay in touch with their audience and monetize, because that's the obvious issue. Is you got to make money. It's an expensive proposition, so you have to make money in order to do it. And we're all a part of how the cigar consumer, for Cigar Press, for Cigar Aficionado, for Developing Palates, for Cigar Coop, for Half Wheel, that audience grows. It makes it possible for somebody that positions themselves as the arbiter of the very, very top of the business to continue to offer an experience to their customers that other people can't replicate. And by the way, every one of you is continuing to do the same thing. You're reaching for how to create an experience that people can only get when they engage with you. That's the beauty of all this.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for this evening. It's been absolutely fantastic having this wonderful conversation with all of you. As Justin Andrews pointed out in the chat, it's 2 a.m. in some parts of the country, and I could not imagine celebrating my 300th episode with a better cast of characters and personalities. So thank you for making the show so memorable, and thank you for the opportunity that all of you have given me in some way, shape, or form to continue this journey. To the last question's point, I'm sure that ELOSOFUMARTAKES will look a lot different in another 300 episodes. But I don't plan on slowing down, because there are a lot more stories that I want to go after, and there are a lot more questions I want to ask and get answers to. And as Erron pointed out earlier, he'll always give me a good question or two to stick in my back pocket. So I plan on getting those questions answered too. So,
fantastic.
So George, Thor, John, Dennis, Tripp, Coop, Mike, Erron, thank you so much for the time tonight. Thank you so much for all your support. Thank you so much for all of your opinions, and thank you so much for everything that you guys do for the industry, because all of you in ways, in a lot of ways, have been an inspiration to me, and will continue to be that. So I plan on getting better, and I have you guys to thank for it. So thank you so much.
Congrats on 300, Bear.
Congrats. That's a big accomplishment,
Congrats.
Bear.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
So for everyone out there, this was our 300th take. And as always, I'm Bear Duplessis, live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star studio of Azle, Texas. He's Tripp, he's Dennis, he's John, he's Erron, he's Coop, he's George, and he is Thor. And guess what, everybody? We'll see you next time.
Peace out. Well done, Bear. Well done.
Thank you.